and personal.
Entitlement and intolerance all rolled into one nice, neat little package.
This is coming from the crew that referred to Conservatives as sewer rats.
The issues are many: jobs, GSAs, the environment, the economy, our very identity.
We will keep government working for you.
Is Alberta as progressive as the orange wave suggests? Or is it true
We can't afford to continue with 4 more years.
our province prefers conservative blue?
This is about what the future of Alberta is going to look like.
And will there be room for other voices in the legislature?
Alberta voters are ready for change.
Where is Alberta going, and who will take it there? Tonight, the answers. Good evening and welcome. I'm Rob Brown. To our viewers across Alberta and across Canada, on CBC News Network and on Facebook, this is Alberta Votes. The polls are now closed and we're waiting for those results, waiting to see how Albertans reacted to one of the most contentious, heated election campaigns in our province's history. We have journalists across Alberta ready to analyze the results and bring you the reaction in real time. The CBC's Kim Trinacity, our provincial affairs reporter, she's live at NDP headquarters in what has been Fortress Edmonton for the New Democrats. And Brian Labby is live at UCP headquarters down at the Big Four on the Stampede grounds in Calgary. Are the opinion polls, are they accurate? Will Jason Kenney be Alberta's next premier? Also with us tonight, our panel of political experts to help explain what it all means. Political strategist Najib Jutt, pollster and pundit Janet Brown, and columnist Graham Thompson. We're going to check in with them throughout the evening. Looking forward to that. If you have a question, by the way, for the panel about the results tonight, you can join the conversation on Facebook Live and let us know what's on your mind. We'll do our best to get you answers to those questions throughout the evening. So, if you've watched an election show before, you know what you want to pay attention to is that graphic at the bottom of your screen there. It's a scoreboard. The numbers you'll soon see there will represent who's leading or eventually who's elected in all 87 ridings across the province. They're going to go up and they're going to go down until those results start to firm up. But the big story is already on that scoreboard. The number you want to watch for there, it's the magic 44. That's the number of seats it takes to secure a majority government here in the province of Alberta. So who will get to 44 first, and then who will stay there? That's the party that will win this election. And bringing us those results as soon as they come in is CBC's Nancy Carlson. Good evening, Nancy.
Good evening, Rob.
So you're standing next to a map here, a lot of orange, a lot of blue on it. This is from 2015. Suffice to say, it's likely to look very different at the end of the night.
Yeah, I really do like looking at this map, though it really gives you an idea of where we are at. So the biggest change we're seeing this year, Rob, is the merger between the two main Conservative parties, the Wild Rose and the Progressive Conservatives. They joined into the United Conservative Party. So that means the vote splitting on the right that helped Rachel Notley's NDP win 4 years ago is not here to help her tonight. We have another big change, and that's redistribution. The boundaries of virtually every riding in the province have changed. 6 ridings also disappeared, and 6 new ridings were created. And something else this year, more advanced poll locations, as well as the Vote Anywhere system. Get this, nearly 700,000 advanced ballots were cast across the 87 ridings, and because of Vote Anywhere, 223,000 people voted outside their ridings, and Elections Alberta has decided that those votes won't be counted until tomorrow. So there will not be any final results from any riding. Plus, in any riding that is too close to call, we won't even be able to project a winner tonight.
Yeah, so if the overall race is super close and it comes down to some of those ridings that's really close, 2 polls from every riding held back that Vote Anywhere. And the vote, you say, doesn't begin until tomorrow. It could be a long night, a long week. Did you pack a toothbrush, sleeping bag?
Obviously. I'm prepared for this, Rob. I'm ready for anything.
I know you are.
Yeah.
All right, Nancy. Looking forward to you bringing us those results as they come in. Nothing on the scoreboard yet. So in the meantime, let's turn things over to the CBC's Kim Trinacity, who's at NDP HQ here in Edmonton. And she has a guest with her. That's Cheryl Oates. That's the Premier's press secretary. So she's smiling. Kim, I'm assuming this means good things for the NDP at this early hour after the polls have closed.
For sure, Rob. So Cheryl Oates, in this capacity, you are the senior campaign advisor. Thanks for joining me today. How are you feeling?
Oh, feeling anxious as the polls come in, but feeling cautiously optimistic and also incredibly proud of the campaign that we've run and incredibly grateful to all of the volunteers we've had across this province in Calgary and in Edmonton, and as well grateful to all of the candidates who have run. At the end of the day, we will be incredibly proud of this campaign, and our party has never been stronger than it is tonight.
So I have to ask you, in the last couple of days, Rachel Notley has given some news conferences and her voice has sounded pretty, dodgy at times. How's she doing right now?
You know what? We had this cold, this sort of sickness going around the bus and going around HQ, and she held off for a really long time in getting it, and unfortunately she's caught it at the end, but she's been a real trooper and hung in there. So she is feeling a little under the weather tonight, but you will see her here nonetheless.
Absolutely. So there's been a lot of talk, Cheryl, over the course of the campaign about why so much negativity, why keep on going after Jason Kenney and his candidates over and over and over again. How do you think that's worked out for you?
Well, I would argue that we have talked about the issues that matter to Albertans every single day of this campaign. Rachel Notley stood up on day one and she talked about a plan for jobs, a plan for diversification. We talked about protecting healthcare. We talked about protecting education. We talked about bringing in a $25 a day childcare program for parents across this province. At the end of the day, Albertans deserve to know the history and the record of their leaders. And Mr. Kenney is running to be premier of this province. And so, yes, we did tell them about his record on LGBTQ rights. We told them about his record on campaigning against a women's right to choose. And at the end of the day, they will make their decisions.
Thanks and all the best, and we'll see you again later this evening, no doubt.
Thanks so much.
Rob, back to you.
Kim, thank you. Yeah, speaking with the campaign official with the NDP camp earlier today and asking about that negativity and whether or not they had any concerns about blowback from that, the response was, hey, it's a campaign. This is politics. Person got his back up a little bit. You draw a contrast. That's what we've done for the people. We'll see if that strategy is effective as those results come in tonight. In the meantime, Jason Kenney, he's been plagued by a cloud of controversy, a lot of self-inflicted wounds, as we've seen throughout the campaign. Let's touch base with Brian Labby. So largely ignoring those controversies is what Jason Kenney's strategy has been, and what he's been trying to do is channel the anxiety, the anger around the state of the economy. How are people there down at UCP headquarters in Calgary, Brian, feeling about the prospect of a first ever UCP government tonight?
Well, they're feeling pretty good, and it's like a party atmosphere down here. The band has taken a break, but the music has been playing since 7 o'clock. People were dancing. There's people who grabbed a front row seat probably about an hour ago, if not longer. People have been filing in here. We're expecting to see about 1,000 people here at the Big Four Centre. And people specifically are looking to Jason Kenney for answers. I just met with one engineer, and he's saying that he's been out of work since June of last year. He says that Jason Kenney, he's confident that Jason Kenney is the leader who can get him back to work, and that's the key for him. I was also chatting with Calgary Conservative MP Michelle Rempel, and she's saying that, listen, this whole notion of how the campaign has been dogged by controversy, she said it is just serving as a distraction, that people want to focus on jobs, the economy, and pipelines. And she said that, listen, it's Rachel Notley who has run this very negative campaign to vilify Jason Kenney, and she's saying that basically this is going to backfire, and she's thinking that Jason Kenney will be successful tonight, and he will be able to get Albertans back to work, like this engineer who I was chatting with, who is desperate to find work.
Feeling so confident at UCP headquarters tonight, they got a little bit of theater planned for Jason Kenney's arrival. You want to quickly bring us up to speed on that, Jason? Or Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. We know about the blue, the Dodge Ram blue pickup truck, right, with United, Strong and Free written on the side of it. That truck is going to roll into the Big Four tonight. Jason Kenney is expected to be behind the wheel. He's going to pull up to the stage. He's going to get out and obviously deliver what he's hoping will be a victory speech.
Yeah, Jason Kenney, for those, thank you, Brian, outside of our province, has been driving that truck. He's put on countless clicks over the past 3 years across the province in all corners, sort of a symbol of his attachment to the worker, trying to get people back to work. So, yep, expect him to arrive in that early or a little later on to this evening at the Big Four down at the Stampede grounds in Calgary. Okay, we're about, 10 minutes past 8 o'clock. We haven't seen any ridings report yet out of the 87. We're still waiting. You got to remind people the way the system works. People are hand counting those ballots. A lot of volunteers doing yeoman's work right now. The hand count sometimes takes a lot of time, and then those results start flooding in. So we're going to bring them to you as soon as we get them. But judging by the turnout at the advance, you got to wonder how high the turnout was today, how many ballots they have to sift through. We've been talking about the big two, but of course, there are more than just two parties in this race. And the Alberta Party could make a bit of a dent tonight, even if its candidates don't capture any seats, because they could take some votes away from the UCP and the NDP for that matter. The CBC's Tanera McLean is live at the Alberta Party's headquarters in Edmonton. And Tanera, realistically, what do you think the party's expecting tonight?
Well, realistically, the party says they are very, very optimistic. Before the show, I was talking to the central campaign organizer for the Alberta Party, Tom Bradley, and he said, we're hopeful for all 44 seats for majority. But, you know, realistically, he said 10 to 12 seats is what they think they can squeak out tonight in some key ridings. So one of the key ridings they are hopeful to get tonight is Greg Clark in Calgary Elbow. He was the only Alberta Party candidate to actually get a seat in 2015 under the Alberta Party banner. They had 3 seats coming into the election. 2 of those were from floor crossings. We had Karen McPherson in Calgary, McKay Nosehill. She is not running tonight. She crossed the floor from the NDP. We also had Rick Fraser in Calgary Southeast. He crossed the floor from the UCP, and he is running tonight, and that is one of the seats they do think they can hold on to. You also have Neil Koratash up in Warrenville, St. Albert. That is a brand new riding, and they're confident he will be able to make a dent there or even win. And another candidate is Catherine O'Neill in Edmonton Riverview. So, Rob, they think they can hold those 10 to 12 seats is what they're expecting.
Yeah, the big question, will the leader in Edmonton McClung secure a seat? Thank you, Tanera. And as you can see, we now have a riding reporting. One number on the board. It's breaking in favor of the UCP. I don't have to tell you how early it is in the night, but Nancy Carlson, you can break down the details of that riding for us. Where are we going?
Yes, so again, it is UCP that we are looking at, and this is in Drayton Valley, Devon. Again, still early in the night, but this is a riding that has made headlines because of the UCP candidate for some questionable comments that he's made during the campaign and before the campaign. So again, we are early in the night, but again, we're looking at the UCP taking an early lead over the NDP in Drayton Valley, Devon. And one of the things to really mention here, Rob, is again, we've been looking at the 2 major cities. We've talked about Calgary and about how that has been really a battleground. But I mean, we're already starting to see the rest of Alberta. It matters. It matters in this election. Every number that we're going to see on that board tonight counts.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, no surprise that the UCP is leading in that riding, but maybe a bit of surprise considering what happened with that candidate. So Mark Smith, for those outside of Alberta, will bring folks up to speed, a former Wild Rose MLA, and during this campaign it came to light that he delivered a sermon where he put gay love alongside pedophilia. That came to light, and Jason Kenney refused to cut Mark Smith loose as a candidate. That caused quite a furor, needless to say, Najib. And Janet, I know you have some thoughts on why you think Kenney didn't do that. Strategically, you think he's gaming things out to the point of him having government and assuming what?
Well, you know, I think one of the things that Jason Kenney's really worried about is not the parties to the left of him, but one party to the right of him. There was a dissatisfied Wild Rose member who was part of the unity effort, but then became disenchanted with Jason Kenney. This is Derek Fildebrandt I'm talking about. He started his own party called the Freedom Conservative Party. I mean, my theory is I think Jason Kenney is really trying to hold on to his ultra-conservative base because he doesn't want Fildebrandt to get a single seat in the legislature. One seat would give him a toehold and would make his whole unity exercise for nothing. Jason Kenney worked hard to put the PCs and the Wild Rose together. He was active at the federal level, putting those 2 right-wing parties together. And I saw when he wouldn't apologize during the Adler interview, when he wouldn't dismiss Mark Smith, I thought, this guy will forego 5 urban seats to prevent Derek Fildebrandt from getting 1 rural seat.
It was too late in the process to get another UCP candidate on the ballot, and so kind of automatically in a riding like that, you would assume the Freedom Conservative Party might win.
When you look at these numbers for Mark Smith, you have to wonder if Mark Smith wasn't the UCP candidate, would the NDP be getting this riding, or would the Freedom Conservatives be getting this riding?
All right, Jenna, thank you for that. Panel, stand by. We have some more results. Turn things over to Nancy.
Thank you, Rob. Again, as you're seeing at the bottom of the screen there, More results are coming in. So let's start here with Brooks Medicine Hat. This is a new riding. We talked about redistribution earlier, and this is one of the ridings that came out of that. So again, the UCP so far in the lead for this one, but again, this is a new riding, so we're keeping our eyes on this one. And then once we move to southern Alberta, we are looking at we're keeping an eye on some of the other numbers there. Again, we are keeping an eye on the rural areas as well as the urban centers. So again, that was Brooks Medicine Hat, and I'll keep you up to date on how the numbers change, Rob.
Yeah, early right now, only 3 ridings reporting at this point, but for those following at home, you got a horse race. 2-1, the UCP and NDP on the board. No other parties popping up yet. So let's focus on the NDP for a second, because we were just talking strategy around that decision. Mark Smith and Jason Kenney. Najib, let's bring things back to the strategy that the NDP had from the outset of this campaign from day one. Trying to appeal, Rachel Notley was, to soft UCP supporters. So really red Tories, the old PC types who supported that party for more than 4 decades. We have this question coming into our Facebook Live conversation. I want to encourage you to join that, by the way, if you're watching at home, from Brennan Fitzgerald, who writes, given the criticism of the NDP campaign strategy, the negativity, a lot of people didn't like it, why didn't they adjust their strategy to focus on their record, especially considering what we are seeing in the polls, a tightening, but the UCP leading in all of those opinion polls?
Listen, negative campaigning works, right? That's why parties do it. It divides people. And I don't think the NDP thought of it as negative campaigning, right? They thought of it as putting a spotlight on the truth and bringing this to attention that this party and this leader wasn't fit to govern. I actually don't understand why the NDP didn't use more of a surrogate strategy, right? The Premier has a lot of strong speakers in her party that she could have used to get that message out while she stayed above the fray and focused on the economy.
Sarah Hoffman, Deputy Premier, for instance, did a bit of that.
Yeah, Phillips, CC, like all of these guys could have been used to get that message out while she stayed above the fray instead of acting like an opposition leader. So I think after the leadership debate, I think they kind of learned that lesson, and it did change. I did see a change in the tone and less of a focus on the negative, more a focus on the record, more a focus on their plans for the future.
I guess, Graham, the flip side of using the surrogates is that, let's face it, frankly, the media wouldn't pay as much attention to Sarah Hoffman as they would Rachel Notley saying these things.
Yeah, and the NDP is all about Rachel Notley. Like, she is the party. She basically won the election for them in 2015. So people pay attention to Notley. The problem is, of course, for her, people like her, and if she was to go too negative, it tends to, I think, be a problem for her brand. It tarnishes the image. So the NDP was kind of caught, as I've mentioned before. If it's the economy, jobs, and pipelines, they had a problem because the economy is slowing down again in Alberta. Jobless rate is up in Edmonton and Calgary, and there's no pipeline. So they felt they really couldn't campaign on that. So they kind of, in a sense, gave those issues to Kenney. And that was a mistake, I think.
Decided to go contrast of characters, but they did put a lot of pressure on Rachel Notley as a result because it was her brand. Okay, you notice that the orange has dropped off that scoreboard there. So as I said, those numbers are going to change. They're going to go up, they're going to go down. Nancy's here to bring us up to speed on why they're changing.
Yeah, Rob, you're really keeping me on my toes tonight as these numbers are starting to come in. 1 second you see one party in the lead, and then all of a sudden more ballots are counted potentially, and then it switches. So let's take a look at where the UCP is sitting in the province right now. We're looking at Drumheller-Stettler. So UCP incumbent there, and again, holding on to this riding, again, Drumheller-Stettler. So again, we're keeping an eye on this. It's, again, still so early in the night. I really want to stress that I have the fun job tonight. I think, sorry to break it to you, Rob, but I feel like I have the fun job just to be able to bring you these details as soon as they come available. So this is another example. We're looking at Innisfail, Sylvan Lake, Devon Dreeshen over the NDP as well as the Alberta Party. Again, small numbers there, but still enough to make a difference. And again, this is a riding that obviously the NDP is going to be keeping an eye on. You're looking at Danielle Larrivee, cabinet minister. She obviously wants to hold on to this. The NDP as a party obviously wants to hold on to this riding. Still early in the night, but is this a sign of what's to come? We will only be able to answer that question as the night continues, Rob.
That is an important one to the NDP, though, as you point out. Danielle Larrivee, a Minister of Children's Services. So super important in terms of being able to hang on to their vote outside Fortress Edmonton. You know, Calgary's a concern. The formula is this in Alberta. There are 3 big districts that are at play. You've got the two major urban centers, Calgary, you got Edmonton, you essentially have the rest of the province. So traditionally, a party that wins two of those is going to find a path to power. So those seats outside of Edmonton, crucial to the NDP. And at this point, as Nancy pointed out, a cabinet minister is trailing there. Another one you pointed out there was Drumheller-Stettler, and it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on that one. Nancy, could be the widest margin for the UCP of any in the province, could be the most conservative riding in Canada. And there was an incumbent there who's running as an independent now, I believe. So should be interesting to watch to see if Mr. Strankman pops up on the board. But I know, as you say, you've got the best job in the biz right now. You've got some more results for us. Walk us through it.
I do. These numbers keep on climbing. And again, we are seeing the UCP on the board there. So the latest numbers that are coming in, we're looking at Highwood. And again, the UCP, look at small numbers here, but again, it is making a difference. So again, this is something that we are keeping an eye on. So again, big cities, rural areas, the NDP obviously looking to hold on to as much as it can right across the province. Again, UCP sitting at 6, but again, we're looking at that 44. That's the key number. You mentioned it earlier, Rob.
Yeah, we've got 6 polls reporting so far. They're all breaking the UCP's way, most of them outside the big cities as far as we can tell so far. And it makes sense, right, when you consider that the vote count isn't going to be as high there, so that we're seeing those results come in as opposed to densely populated urban ridings. Okay, NDP back on the board. You want to give us that one quickly before we touch base with Kim Ternacity down at NDP headquarters?
Why not, Rob? Let's take a look at where the NDP is getting onto the board here right now. I believe it is in Edmonton. So this is Edmonton Highlands Norwood. Again, this is Brian Mason's former riding. He is not running this time. But Janice Irwin holding on right now. And again, this is the only one that we're seeing from the city of Edmonton right now. So we are keeping an eye on that. Again, NDP, that's where they're making their way on the board there in Edmonton Highlands Norwood, Rob.
That's a must hold for them for sure.
Absolutely.
Brian Mason, a former leader, long-time MLA and cabinet minister. All right, as promised, let's go down to NDP headquarters at the Edmonton Convention Centre. Kim Ternacity standing by. So we have at least one seat leading where the NDP are leading right now, Kim, but just looking at what is supposed to be the party formulated and behind you, it looks kind of thin there so far.
Well, they're trickling in, Rob. You know, they've got a room next door as well, too, where the drinking and the eating happens, and then they come over here to watch the results. So I'm not sure if people are maybe drinking and eating a little bit more than they're looking at the results right now, but they are trickling in. And lots of orange T-shirts around. There are some folks looking very serious in the seats watching the results, and others look to be actually quite relaxed and relieved almost that it's finally over. You know, and I was speaking earlier to Cheryl Oates, a senior advisor in the campaign, and she said, well, this is the most relaxed she's been in a long, long time, probably in the last 4 years, because they're not thinking about strategy and campaigns and how to proceed. So there's nothing they can do now. Polls are closed. All they can do is sit back and watch the results pour in. Rachel Notley herself is watching the results at the Hotel Macdonald with her family. And later on this evening, she will address the crowd, which is expected to be more than 1,000 people tonight. We'll see how many come down and support Rachel Notley one more time before we finally know what happens with all the results. Rob?
All right, Kim, thank you. Well, if Rachel Notley is indeed watching these results, she just saw that NDP seats that they were leading in Edmonton fall off the scoreboard, Nancy. So things are changing out there, and it's early, but things are looking promising at this stage for the UCP.
Yeah, you're looking at the counts go up as we are looking at more of those ballots being counted. So again, Janice Irwin was leading in her riding, but that switched over, and now we're looking at Peace River here. Again, you have the UCP leading, so that's part of where we see this 8 from. So again, you're looking at 37, 9 and 4, small numbers. The NDP looking like they are making a comeback on the bottom there. But again, we're keeping an eye on this because it is expected to flip back and forth for a little while here until those numbers get a little bit higher. Now you're looking at Edmonton Decor, the NDP. This one again, are they going to be able to hold on to this? that, of course, is a big question that we will be looking to answer. And again, you're looking at the NDP making their way onto the board there as those numbers are starting to come in. Rob, I don't think it's going to be very long before I'm talking to you again.
I suspect so.
Yeah.
So let's get quickly down to Brian Labby, who's at UCP headquarters, and I promise I'll come back to you shortly as those numbers jump up on the board in favor of the UCP. Still 12-4 on your scoreboard, leading and elected in the ridings that are reporting so far. So it's kind of a tale of two cities tonight. It's kind of a tale of two headquarters for the parties, Brian. Relatively quiet at NDP HQ in Edmonton, but the party's picking up where you are, down at the Stampede grounds.
Yeah, that's right, Rob, absolutely. There's been a smattering of applause early on as we saw those numbers, UCP leading in 4, UCP leading in 6. Obviously, we're up to about 12 now. So, the applause is growing, the momentum, you can just feel that there are a lot of happy faces here. When I look back and just sort of gauge the crowd, people seem to be, a lot of backslapping, lots of handshaking, lots of smiles. So it seems like people are so far thrilled with what they're seeing.
Brian, thank you. Okay, to battleground Edmonton now as those numbers shift. We're getting a closer look at how things are playing out in the capital, Nancy.
Yeah, and this is an area, obviously, that the NDP wanted to hold on to, and it looks as though early on it is able to hold on to some key places here in the city. So you're looking at Edmonton City Centre, David Shepherd holding on to that in the heart of the city there. And then as we're looking at Edmonton-McClung, this one, pay attention to this one. Look who else is on the board there. Stephen Mandel, leader of the Alberta Party. He, of course, is looking to make inroads. Is he going to be able to take the power away from the NDP in this riding? Still early, but again, that's when we're going to be watching. That's Edmonton-McClung. And then we're going to stick with Edmonton here, and we're looking, we're going to Calgary Northwest now. And again, the UCP making inroads. Perhaps all of the effort that they put into getting into Calgary is going to be working. We'll have to keep our eyes out for that. And again, back to Edmonton here, a name that many people will probably recognize, Laurie Sigurdsson, again with the NDP there, holding on to that seat. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that one as well. And then Edmonton, Rutherford here as well. We have Richard Feehan dropping behind the UCP there. So we are keeping an eye on that one, obviously. And then here in St. Albert, we're looking at the Alberta Party. So again, we have a third line there in the bottom of your screen. So we will be keeping an eye to see where that is. And again, obviously the Liberals, we haven't seen them appear on the board at the bottom there. So we will be taking a closer look at that as the night progresses, Rob.
Nancy, if the NDP is going to hold on to power, they need to hold on to Edmonton, and not just Edmonton, right? As we've talked about, they need to hang on to the donuts, so that's St. Albert riding. That's a bit of a bellwether for them. Really important, Marie Renaud, they want to hang on to that one. Saw one cabinet minister who is trailing in that cluster, another who is out front. So early days, early hours, early minutes, can't read a lot into those yet, but let's see what the panel has to say about those as you continue to take a look at the riding results as they come in. So, okay. We've got a good chunk on the board here, and we've got what appears to be a competitive race. What do you think of what you're seeing so far, Janet, in terms of the early results?
So far, nothing surprising. I mean, these are really small numbers. I mean, a lot of the polls that are, or a lot of the ridings that are reporting only have 1 or 2 polls in. So, it's still early, but this is, I think, the way we expected it to break. And most of the ridings coming in, it seems to be we have a big focus on the rural ridings right now. We haven't seen too much from Calgary yet, so it's what we expected, but it's still early.
You're a pollster, about 5,000 votes into the system reporting so far, so a healthy sample, but not a lot to read into at this point.
Well, it's only a good sample if it's representative, and quite frankly, we don't know where these votes are coming from, so we don't know how representative is of the whole province.
Good point. And a lot coming from the rest of the province, the rural region, so we haven't seen a lot from the cities. What we have seen in the cities, however, and in particular here in the capital, Graham, where you work out of at the legislature, as those riding boards pass through, what was standing out for you?
Yeah, the fact that the UCP is quite close in some of these ridings. These are some of the ridings the NDP is very sure of. Of course, it's early minutes, as you said. We'll see what actually happens later on, but the fact that UCP and the NDP were kind of going back and forward, because the NDP is convinced it's going to do really well in Edmonton. Of course, then the battleground becomes Calgary. But if the numbers were as close as if they continue to be that close in Edmonton, that's going to be a problem for the NDP.
Okay, and anything standing up for you as an Edmontonian, keeping a close eye on the details and the machinations in any particular riding there tonight?
I'm with Graham. I'm a little bit surprised at how close those ridings are that we thought were going to be.
Which ones jump out at you?
What was the last one that I just saw?
St. Albert was the
St.
last
Albert.
one we saw.
Yeah, St. Albert. That one was really interesting. Actually, I know Barry Bailey really well, and St. Albert is one of those tight-knit communities that the Alberta Party could actually take, because it is a lot more about how active that candidate is in their community.
Okay, 48 seats still to report, 27 for the UCP right now, 28 and 12 for the NDP. So far, early as we say, but the stories about the UCP gains. And Nancy, I know you have some details on that front.
I do, and nothing says it better than the map of Alberta for you to be able to see where the UCP is making gains across the province. So again, we aren't seeing a lot of results coming in from the major centers, Calgary and Edmonton, but outside those numbers are coming in a little bit faster. Let's take a closer look at some of those ridings where we are seeing the UCPs making early headway. So you're looking at Lethbridge East. Lethbridge has been a real hot spot during this election. So again, this one is an NDP incumbent, but again, you're seeing the UCP gaining some ground there. Lethbridge West. This is where Rachel Notley and Jason Kenney both launched their campaigns. It is crucial for both parties. Shannon Phillips, former cabinet minister, she's in this riding, and right now, very close though, behind the UCP. And then we're going to take a look here at Grand Prairie. This is again a new riding because of that redistribution, but the UCP, it looks like they're holding on to that right now. And then finally, let's take a look at Lac St. Anne Parkland. In this riding, you are seeing, again, cabinet minister falling behind the UCP there. So again, we're looking at 4 areas where the UCP is making inroads. And of course, NDP wanting to hold on to as much of this province as they can. Right now, we are still waiting for more results to come in from the 2 main cities, but you are starting to see this map turn more blue than it was at the end of 2015, Rob.
Okay, so that's a detailed look at a lot of the ridings that have reported so far, a granular look. I want to go big picture for a second and zoom out with a couple of key infographics which will indicate to us early on where this race is going. Share of the popular vote. This is a really important metric in determining who will form a majority government tonight. So historically, 40.6. No party has ever formed a majority government in this province without getting at least that share of the popular vote. The UCP way ahead of that right now, 55.3%. The NDP is the party that secured that 40.6 in 2015. Right now, they're sitting at just 31% of the popular vote. So they're not even getting the vote that they had in 2015. And they need to build beyond that in order to have a hope of forming a majority government. So from share of the popular vote, I want to show you the seat change projections, because at this point, it's all about seats, right? This is where the rubber hits the road. Sometimes the vote share does not translate to seats. In this case, we can tell you that the UCP is tracking at this point with about 7,000 votes into our system to gain 15 seats. Guess what? That's a magic number for the UCP. That number would give them a majority government tonight. The NDP, it could afford to lose 13 seats and still hold on to government. You saw they're at minus 15 right now, Nancy. It's shaping up to not be the night that the folks here at NDP headquarters in Edmonton, as Kim has taken us to from time to time, have been hoping for, Nancy. So let's walk through some more riding results. I know you have them standing by.
Yeah, and Rob, one of the things I want to mention, because we are so early, let's talk about the hypotheticals as well. So when we take a look at this possible majority for the UCP, so right now, leading and elected in 36 ridings, they need 44 for the majority. Let's say that they are able to hold on to the ridings that were held by the Wild Rose as well as the PCs in the last election. That's 8. So that would take them to the majority that they need. They would have 2 extra seats there in order to get that majority. So again, leading and elected for the UCP, and then looking at that majority for 44. So it's looking that this is the direction that we are headed. So where are they making those inroads? We are starting to get more results from southern Alberta. Taking a look at some Calgary ridings now, they are starting to come in. We are starting to get more numbers. So for example, Calgary Edgemont, again, UCP making some inroads there. And again, we are starting to see some Liberals there on the board as well, keeping an eye on that. And then, then again, you're looking at the bottom there, 39 for the UCP, 20 for the NDP, Rob. I'm keeping an eye on this. We have Calgary Falconridge as well. So this is, here's another one. Again, these numbers are just starting to come in right now. So we're looking at Rick McIver, again, a name that many people know, holding on to Calgary Hayes there with the UCP. And then in Calgary West, again, UCP holding on to this in Calgary West. Details still coming in. It's flipping as we go. So I'm on my toes. I'm not falling asleep just yet, Rob.
I hope not. We're just getting started.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Nancy. Yeah, a couple of those names there, Mike Ellis, Rick McIver, would be familiar definitely to Calgarians, but they're incumbents. You would expect to see them perhaps in a Jason Kenney cabinet. And I say that because look at that. The UCP have just nudged up against that magic number of 44 seats, which is what it takes to secure a majority government in Alberta. So jumping out in front dramatically there. Still a lot of seats to report, but trending definitely in the direction of a UCP government tonight. 44, that magic number, it really jumps off the screen, doesn't it, Graham? I mean, we're leaning hard in the direction at this point of a UCP government. Are you surprised at how quickly we're getting to that threshold tonight?
Actually, no, I'm not. I think we're expecting this. I think that we knew before. The public opinion polls have been showing a trend for the last year, really, that this is going to be UCP headed to a majority government. We'll see how it turns out, but this is something that I think that we saw coming. The question is going to be just how large a majority will it be?
Question's going to be if, in fact, these numbers hold, Najib, just how small will the official opposition be? And what does that mean for the future of the NDP? Those numbers right now, if they hold below 20, how would you characterize that for the NDP?
I still think that's a pretty strong opposition. I mean, for them, it's always going to be disappointing, but I think if they hold on to 18, 20 seats, they'll still have a good voice in the legislature.
Only in Alberta would we say, an incumbent held power and reduced to a decent-sized opposition is a success. All right, Nancy, as we hit that 44 on the board for the UCP, let's talk about how the UCP is getting there.
All right, and that takes us to the popular vote when we look at how the UCP is sitting. So again, that 50%, we are inching closer to a majority government, because as soon as we cross that 50% mark, that's a lot of confidence for the UCP in the province of Alberta. Taking a look at where the NDP is, not a significant change compared to the kind of support that they saw in 2015, but it is enough because the NDP does not have the advantage of the Conservatives with their vote splitting. So again, not too much of a change there, but it is enough to make a difference when it comes to the polls that we are seeing on the bottom of the screen there, Rob.
Thank you, Nancy. And that was the argument, Janet, that Jason Kenney was making all along when he returned to Alberta from decades in Ottawa. Look, follow me. I've got a vision here. We're going to combine those two parties. We're going to end the feuding in the Conservative family, and we're going to get back to what we saw in 2015. If you combine the vote, 52 almost % of the popular vote. They're nudging there tonight at this point. Do you see those numbers reversing based on the sample size that's growing by the minute here?
Again, it is small numbers right now, but what's interesting for me is at 51%, that's almost identical to the combined vote for the PCs and the Wild Rose in the last election. So Jason Kenney's managed to hold that. And so when he talked about the need to unite the right in order to defeat the NDP, these numbers would suggest that he was right and he has done it.
Okay, all right, stand by, because the CBC Decision Desk is prepared to make the following projection. The people of Alberta have elected Jason Kenney and the UCP to a majority government, the first united Conservative Party government in this province's history. The people of Alberta united behind the United Conservative Party. We were just talking about it. This was Jason Kenney's vision. It was his brainchild. It was his plea when he returned from Ottawa after decades as an MP and a cabinet minister. He said, hey, I've seen this movie before in the Conservative family. I've seen it fractured, come together, and then win a majority federally in 2011. I can do it at the provincial level. He has done that tonight. So he brought those two parties, the PCs and the Wild Rose, together, and out of the ashes of those parties, he formed a party, the UCP, that is really still in its infancy, not yet even 2 years old. But he was proven correct tonight. The people of Alberta, they put the economy, they put jobs, they put pipelines and energy ahead of any distractions around the leadership question. How Jason Kenney secured it, let's go down to UCP headquarters where Brian Labby is standing by tonight, where they have to be thrilled. Brian, a lot of those supporters in that room, they woke up in 2015 after the election result. They didn't recognize their province. I imagine they'll be sleeping soundly this evening.
Absolutely, Rob. And you know, when they look back to 2015, so many people have described it as an accidental government when Rachel Notley took over in 2015 after 44 years of Conservative rule. So people are thinking here that, listen, we're just going back to where we were, and this is the way things should be in Alberta. What happened in 2015 was an aberration with, of course, the two parties, two rival parties on the right split, and that allowed the NDP to take a victory with just 40% of the vote. So people are thrilled here. The cheers have been going up. And obviously you can see in behind that there is a lot of shouting and hollering and high fives and chants of UCP. So, you know, when you look back at this campaign that's been dogged by controversy, I've chatted with so many party supporters, party members who just say, listen, it doesn't matter. And I know that we've said this so many times, but the party officials say that's a distraction that was driven by Rachel Notley. People who are down, looking for jobs, they're saying that all of that doesn't matter. Unemployment in Calgary across Alberta remains stubbornly high. People want to get back to work, and that's really what they've been focused on. And Jason Kenney has stuck to that message, and it appears certainly that there's a big payoff for him tonight.
Jason Kenney securing, as I say, this province's first UCP majority government. History made on that front. Thank you, Brian Labby. We'll be checking back with you in just a minute. History made on another front. There has been, in the history of this province, no party that was elected to a majority government that then was not re-elected to a consecutive term. So Rachel Notley, she'll have that asterisk next to the term that she just saw out. She will now be sitting as the leader of the official opposition, assuming the voters of Edmonton Strathcona re-elect her tonight. It's a relatively safe seat. There couldn't be a safer seat in all likelihood in all of the province. All right, a lot of talk about the Notley campaign and how it ended up where it is tonight, still to come. Let's focus on this history-making moment, and let's do so with the panel. And I want to do so with somebody who has covered 10 provincial election campaigns in his time. We were talking about this off-air, yes. Graham. You go back to Getty's first win. So put this in perspective for us. The idea that this province, which was once known for its conservative identity, a lot of people question that. Are we a more progressive place in 2015? Have we now turned back the clock?
This is a good question. Notley would say no. You know, this is the economy, this is the jobs and pipelines election. NDP is going to say no. This is not us going back to 44 years of conservative rule. Of course, the NDP is going to say that. We'll have to wait and see. The difference, though, tonight, the NDP will be disappointed, but the fact is they've got 23 seats for the opposition, and for the first time, even though they were defeated tonight, this is going to be, I think, a relatively strong opposition, because for the first time, we're going to have an opposition in Alberta that's actually been in government.
For the first time, we're going to have someone who's a leader of the official opposition who is the Premier.
And you're going to have people who will be critics of departments, ministers actually were the minister just a matter of days ago. And also, I think that there's a sense that maybe we're turning a corner. So maybe it's going to be the UCP for the next 44 years. We just don't know. Or maybe we'll start seeing a back and forth like we see in other provinces where parties come and go, governments come and go. This province, yes, we tend to vote in one party that stays there for decades. This may be happening tonight, but the NDP, the fact they've got a strong opposition with a leader who used to be the Premier, that's going to maybe change things.
Janet, let's linger on this victory for a moment for the UCP, and in particular for Jason Kenney. A lot of people expected, after Stephen Harper lost the federal election in 2015, okay, Jason Kenney's next in line. He's going to throw his hat in the ring. That would be the path for him. He surprised a lot of people to come back to Alberta and pursue this as a personal victory for this master organizer goes. I mean, it's really largely, it's his victory tonight, is it not?
Well, it is. I mean, when he came back to provincial politics, a lot of people were skeptical. And one of the things that they were most skeptical about was his ability to put the Wild Rose and the PCs together. They'd been divided for quite a lot of time. There was animosity between them. You know, there's no feud like a family feud, and that's what was going on by these two right-wing parties. And so a lot of analysts, me included, thought it would be virtually impossible for him to put these two parties together. You know, the far right-wingers would drop off, and then the red Tories, the centrists, would drop off. But when you look at these vote numbers, it looks like he's managed to sort of, you know, put these two parties together. And I think what's holding, the traditional Wild Rosers and the traditional PCers together is the desire to defeat the NDP government. It looks like they have. Now Jason Kenney has to keep this big tent party together now that the common threat has been eliminated.
That was definitely his sales job, right? The accidental government of the NDP. If you want the end of it, follow my path. Although I will say, with still 16 ridings to report, Najib, so we still haven't seen all of the vote, and those numbers are going to change. This is not what people in the UCP camp were expecting in terms of seat count. So 47 is a slim majority. It'll likely track up in the hours ahead as we get some of that advance ballot that is yet to be counted, but they were hoping for a landslide in some UCP circles. So shade that a bit for us tonight in terms of expectations for the UCP. Is this falling short?
I don't know if it's falling short, but you know what? Having a large victory can also be not a situation you want to be into, especially such a diverse party as the UCP. So imagine you have 65, 70 seats. Then you got to deal with a whole contingent in your party that may not be in line with your views.
This is what Jana was talking
about. Exactly, right?
So
Mr. Kenney, I think, will rule with an iron fist regardless, but there's that sweet spot that you want to be at, maybe 55 seats, so you're comfortable that, if there's any disgruntled people, you're still okay. But a large party can also be a little bit unwieldy to manage.
So this has happened before in history. You get Klein had the deep six backbenchers who caused some problems for him when he had, in a sense, too many MLAs. You can't put them all in cabinet. You got to keep them happy, and then after a year or two, they get kind of bored and they start causing problems.
We'll get into the weeds on cabinet making still to come, and that iron fist you were talking about. I think a lot of Albertans are going to be curious. What kind of government are we going to get from Jason Kenney, Premier Designate here in Alberta? But first, let's take a look at that path to victory. We mentioned that Calgary was key. It was a battleground. Nancy, you have some details on how the vote is breaking down in that city.
Yeah, Rob, the focus on Calgary seems to have been effective for the UCP right now. So when we take a closer look at Calgary, you can see how the UCP has gained ground in the northern part of the city as well as the southern part of the city, a little bit of NDP stronghold in the center there. But again, we're going to see how this changes. Let's take a closer look at a few of these ridings. So this is how the UCP has gained this majority. You're looking at Calgary Elbow. I don't just want you to focus on the UCP and the NDP in this image. You have Greg Clark with the Alberta Party. There was a lot of confidence that he was going to take this riding. He is the incumbent. However, we are looking at the UCP here in Calgary Elbow. Then you're looking at Calgary Curry. This one potentially up in the air. You have the NDP as the incumbent and the UCP overtaking them in Calgary Curry. And then as we take a look, again, all of these ridings have a different story attached to them. Calgary Varsity, again, this is the riding of former cabinet ministers Stephanie McLean. She's not running again. And you have the UCP taking hold of this one. So that's Calgary Varsity. And then here we have Calgary Fish Creek. Again, in southern Calgary, the UCP has held on to this one. So when we look at how the UCP is making inroads into Calgary, they're potentially holding on or taking it from the NDP, or in an example like Calgary Elbow, you are looking at somebody like Greg Clark with the Alberta Party who just isn't able to hold on tonight, Rob.
Yeah, some high-profile NDP candidates, I think Anne McGrath and Varsity, appear to be going down to defeat tonight, which would be a disappointment for an opposition NDP led by Rachel Notley, assuming she continues to lead that party, and we expect that we'll hear from Rachel Notley in the minutes, the hours ahead with a concession speech. But she wants to have representation, no doubt, outside of Fortress Edmonton. Edmonton is where NDP HQ is tonight. That's where Kim Ternacity, our provincial affairs reporter, is. So Kim, first off, just your reaction to this UCP victory, and then what does it mean for the future of the NDP in this province?
Well, right now you can probably hear a little bit of hooping and hollering going on, and that's the crowd reacting to individual results as they come up on screen, and some familiar names look to be leading in their ridings, such as Darren Billis in Edmonton, Shay Anderson just outside the city in Leduc-Beaumont, that area leading so far, but some of them are very tight. When all the television stations and outlets declared a UCP Conservative majority, it was pretty quiet in here. There were, I haven't seen any tears, but I've seen lots of hugs. And then now it seems like the attention has shifted to individual races and who is going back to the Legislative Assembly and which one of their team will not be returning, because it looks like several of them will not be returning. So individual races they're concentrating on. The room is by no means full, but there's another room next door. And they are taking some solace from some familiar names, as I said, who appear to be leading. And in some of those seats that there were big question marks around, like would they be able to hold on to those Edmonton seats that were further away from the core of Edmonton? And it appears right now that their MLAs are leading in those races so far, but some major disappointment as well too when results have gone up in the screen showing that they were not doing as well as they had hoped in urban Calgary ridings, such as the one Anne McGrath is running for. The NDP had high hopes that she would win that seat, and at this point I know that you just said that she is trailing in that seat so far, but not a lot of celebration, but for individual races there is some optimism.
Yeah, we continue to hear people cheer, so spirits are high in spite of the results. A party's had a taste of power, especially one that's been in the political wilderness for as long as the NDP had been before 2015. It's going to be difficult when they lose that, but they're sitting currently at 24 seats, Kim, so a relatively robust opposition. You've covered the legislature for years. I'm pretty sure we haven't seen numbers quite that close until, 93? Or is that Decor, 32 he took? So we're nudging up there. A respectable showing, can we call it that?
Oh, I think so. I mean, consider where the NDP were before 2015. They had 4 seats. There was Rachel Notley, Darren Billis, Brian Mason, and David Eggen. And they went from a party of 4 to forming the government. And now they're showing at last count, 24 seats that they're leading in. So they do have reason to celebrate here tonight, which is why the crowd is reacting the way they are. And if the final results show that there are even more than 24 seats, that's going to be a substantial opposition. And when Jason Kenney goes in to form his government and to set his priorities, he'll be facing an experienced opposition in that he'll have an opposition that has been in power recently. So he'll be facing a leader of the official opposition who was the premier. So she knows how government works in Alberta. Plus, she has also sat in opposition. And one thing we can say with clarity and definitely that the NDP knows how to performs well as opposition. Rob?
All right, Kim, thank you. Yeah, only in Alberta would the loss of government and a respectable showing in opposition be a positive sign for a party, Nancy. We're not used to a lot of opposition after that 44-year reign of the PCs. It never really felt like we were ever going to see another party in power. The UCP, as we've been talking about, is going to form a majority government. Premier designate Jason Kenney, and he always wanted to make sure that not just in southern Alberta, not just in the conservative base of Calgary, he wanted seats in and around Edmonton. How's that looking for the UCP tonight?
Yeah, let's take a look here. So you see within Edmonton, fairly strong NDP hold right now. But the surrounding areas, this is the area that we're focusing on right now as we do look at this UCP lead. Let's narrow it in just a little bit here when we look at the individual ridings. So you're looking at Edmonton Southwest, for example. This one has the UCP in the lead there. And then when we take a look at some of the other areas, West Yellowhead, again, you have the UCP in the lead there. Again, the NDP incumbent isn't running in this area. So did that play a role? We'll have to keep our eyes out and see. And again, here you had another NDP not running, and perhaps that's what has the UCP in the lead, maybe name recognition. And again, then you're looking at Spruce Grove, Stony Plain. So we are looking at the areas outside of Edmonton. Again, we actually are just seeing some changes here. As this map changes, you're seeing some of the other numbers come in, and then you're seeing the colors close in a little bit. But again, Edmonton itself is holding on to that NDP. And again, that's what the NDP wanted to see. So This is the result that we're seeing right now when we look at those 24 seats that the NDP is holding on to right now, Rob.
And no doubt those projected gains for the UCP in the donut around Edmonton leading to that number on your scoreboard nudging up for the United Conservative Party yet again into 60 territory. I can tell you that one of the seats that will be sitting with Jason Kenney occupying it in the legislature is the seat that goes to the person who wins Calgary-Lougheed, and that is Jason Kenney. The people of Calgary-Lougheed have decided to send the leader of the UCP back to the legislature. No surprise there. That was considered perhaps the safest UCP seat in the province. He won a by-election there by a landslide not long ago. Okay, let's talk about the situation with the NDP. And I want to talk about how the NDP got to where it did tonight. Yes, respectable is the word we've been using. A considerable opposition when you consider Lawrence Decore and the Liberals in 1993 with 32 seats. But Najib, where did they go wrong? We talked about the negativity in the campaign. Was it that? Was it parking too much at the feet of Rachel Notley? Was it not talking enough about the vision piece? Or, hey, guess what? This government inherited a recession. It came into power. The price of oil took a nosedive, job loss. Whenever the economy's in the tank, traditionally voters punish the incumbent. It was as simple as that?
No, you know what? I think it started a lot earlier. I think some mistakes were made early on that they weren't able to recover from. Bill 6, the farmers' insurance, right? I don't think that they ever regained that trust with the rural areas. How the carbon tax affected some of those smaller rural areas and smaller urban centers that were hit hard by the downturn in the economy. I think those things really hurt them because, I mean, when you played the numbers, like without being able to at least make some ground in the rural and smaller urban areas, it was tough to win.
Any thoughts on that, Graham? Why they lost it?
Yeah, I think there's an issue here about just having bad luck. Yes, they made mistakes. Bill 6 is a classic example, the farm safety bill. That was the premier whose background is a lawyer, a labor lawyer, and she thought, this is a no-brainer. I'm going to bring in a law to help protect paid farm workers, and she didn't do enough consultation, got rural voters really upset. But I think still you can't underestimate the fact that we were in a recession, bad luck. In Alberta's history, Albertans tend to punish governments and it doesn't always mean they lose, but for example, in 1989, Don Getty lost his own seat because he was in a recession. So I think that voters tend to punish premiers who have bad luck, and boy, Notley's had a lot of bad luck.
Yeah, as I say, coming into power with a recession taking shape, job loss. The price of oil really never has rebounded. We're in a new era if you listen to energy experts. Janet, before we check in with Nancy, I recall 2015 on election night when we were talking about Rachel Notley's win and what she should or shouldn't do in the early days. And we had former Chief of Staff to Alison Redford, strategist Stephen Carter on the show, and he said, proceed slowly. Essentially, don't rock the boat. You had a party that was sitting there with a lot of pent-up energy, with a vision for the province. Did they go too fast for most Albertans in implementing that?
Well, they were a brand new government. They took 3 or 4 months to sort of figure out where the washrooms were and where their offices were, and then they really started to take action quickly. They started to describe themselves as an activist government, and they really got to work making some significant changes. And I think they misjudged public opinion along the way. I think they did some things that were very tone deaf to the concerns of Albertans. As the price of oil started to slip, it was like the NDP weren't acknowledging the pain and the fear that Albertans were facing. I remember the Premier spoke to the Calgary Chamber of Commerce a few months after she was elected. And, she stood up there and she said how happy she was to be in Calgary. And, and she was sort of doing a victory lap, and she endorsed Mulcair in the federal election. And the Calgary business crowd just sat there slack-jawed. They couldn't believe that she wasn't responding to the office towers downtown that were emptying out of employees and the stock prices that were crashing.
Out of sync with a really important center for sure. 25% vacancy rate still, I believe, in the downtown core in Calgary. And for those who are watching across the nation, that emphasis on Calgary, that's how you can tell someone's not from Calgary. That's not a good thing.
It's like when someone says they're from
Alberta.
Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto. Okay, Nancy, you want to break down some more of the NDP vote share tonight?
Yes, absolutely, Rob. So when we look back at 2015 and we look at how the NDP had a victory, they won with the lowest popular vote in Alberta history in order to take home a win. Let's break it down from the different areas of the province. So when we look at the confidence of being able to declare the UCP as a majority government, we also look at this popular vote here. So you can see it's down right across the province there. You're looking at down 11.5 percentage points. That's in the Edmonton area. That's where they really wanted to hold on. So again, when you see these drops, that sends a significant message when we are looking at these totals. And again, we are starting to see more numbers coming in different ridings. Your riding, you'll be able to see it there right across the bottom of the screen as we are watching these numbers and we are taking a look at that. But again, the popular vote is something that we always want to keep in the back of our minds because it does play a role when we are looking at some of these results.
Talk to a couple of different people in the NDP campaign this morning, Nancy, thank you, about what their hopes were for Calgary in particular, because we know they had to do well. They took more than half the seats there in 2015. That was their path to power, along with the smattering in the rural areas. One person said, hey, it's not unthinkable that we could capture 17, grow the seat count in Calgary. Another saying, we're going to hold. How does a strategist get it so wrong on the grounds? You're the strategist.
Well, I think it's just being tone deaf to what the real issues is. Going in and, like you said, an activist government and thinking that, when people are hurting and their household budgets and their pocketbooks are hurting, that you're going to sell them on social causes. I mean, in an ideal society, we should be able to care for both. We should be able to care about economy and a just society. But when people are hurting, you got to talk to them in those terms. You got to know that you feel that pain and that you're doing things to alleviate it. And I don't think that the NDP carried that message into Calgary. They tried to. This is like another good lesson for political parties. Is you got to change your message and know your audience. You can't just carry the same message across an entire province.
So it's a tale of two cities in Alberta again, Graham, and harkens back to the days when some referred to Edmonton as Redmonton when the Liberals dominated. The idea that there might be some inroads for sure for the UCP in and around the donut, maybe even in some key ridings in Edmonton, but governing from that point of view, that's not ideal for any new premier.
It's not, because Edmonton's going to be this island of orange, the NDP island, in the sea of UCP blue, and this is a problem because also the opposition is going to be just focused on Edmonton, and this is a problem for Kenney. It's going to try and bring Albertans together. You're going to have this city that's going to be out of government, and this is going to cause a problem. It's been a problem in the past for when Klein, the same thing happened to Klein. People get upset in Edmonton and think that the premier's favouring Calgary and favouring other parts of the province because the city did not vote with the government. And this is an issue, of course, this issue, Edmonton versus Calgary over the years. Now you're going to have Edmonton, in a sense, out of government, and that's going to cause a problem for the city. In terms of the perception, maybe they won't be governing just for Calgary and the rest of Alberta, but the perception in Edmonton is going to be that we got shut out. And we're being punished, perhaps, by UCP.
One way to address that perception always is to make sure that people from Edmonton, in this case, show up in cabinet, in positions of prominence. And it's going to be a bit of tricky cabinet making if he only has so many of his candidates who secure seats in and around Edmonton tonight, Jason Kenney. One name that maybe a lot of people would think would be a shoo-in for cabinet, former interim leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, Rick McIver, who came out and supported Jason Kenney as soon as he returned to Alberta. Let's take a look at how he's doing tonight, Nancy.
Yeah, let's do that, Rob. We're taking a look at the map, and again, a lot of blue on this map. You are seeing far more blue all right across the province than we were in 2015. So we are seeing a different picture than what we saw even at the beginning of the night. So again, you had mentioned Rick McIver, and here you're looking at it, Calgary. Hayes, significant lead in this riding, holding on. Then as we take a look at Drayton Valley Devon, again, a name that Albertans are familiar with. There was some controversy from this riding. UCP taking this one as well. And then you're also looking at Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo. We are looking at the areas outside of Edmonton. Again, we looked at Calgary there as well. And again, this is how the UCP has claimed this victory for the province here. And again, then you're also looking at Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills, where you are seeing the UCP with a significant lead in that riding as well, Rob.
Yeah, Nathan Cooper elected by the people of that riding. So there we saw several potential cabinet ministers, including Mark Smith. He was the critic for education, that portfolio. Whether or not he actually makes it into the education minister's ministry. If he inherits that once he moves into cabinet, that's another matter altogether. So cabinet making is one piece of the picture for a new premier. The things that they have to start thinking about is a planned transition to government now that the UCP has been projected to form a majority government here in Alberta. But Jason Kenney has a long list of priorities and action items that he wants to get to. And Brian Labby is joining us now once again from the Stampede grounds in Calgary, site of UCP headquarters where the party's at in this province tonight, which is awash in blue. So let's talk about those first 100 or so days of a UCP government. Brian, what should Albertans expect?
Well, it's been described as the summer of repeal or the 100 days of action, but just chatting with some UCP party officials, and they're saying there's absolutely no doubt in their mind that Jason Kenney is going to roll up his sleeves and get to work right through the summer, trashing many of the NDP's controversial policies. We've always heard about scrapping the carbon tax. That is going to be Bill 1. They're also talking about moving on, turning off the taps to BC. Jason Kenney has talked about that being his first order of business when he holds a cabinet meeting. That law obviously is already on the books. They're saying that they're going to proclaim it into law. There's been talk about scrapping the cap, the NDP cap on oil sands emissions. They're going to ease off on the plan to phase out coal-fired power plants. They're going to scrap that multi-billion-dollar plan to ship oil by rail. They're going to cut a lot of red tape for business. There is a long list of items that Jason Kenney plans to move forward with, and apparently it's going to happen very soon. They want to get going within 2 weeks, possibly. They're talking about a swearing-in ceremony 2 weeks from today. Some of his members of his inner circle have been telling me tonight.
So, Brian, no question Jason Kenney has a mandate to implement his plan. People have voted for it. But I wonder, from the people that you've been talking to there, are they surprised at the size of this majority government right now, leading and elected in 62 of the 87 ridings in the province? I know a lot of people had hopes that this would be a true landslide tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a sense of that. Obviously, there's been a lot of applause, lots of cheers, chants of UCP, but you'd think that it would have been a little bit turned up a little bit even higher. But you're right. When the announcement came through, we were at that 44 seat level and then up to 50, and now we're sitting at about 62. So people were thinking that it was going to be much stronger, possibly hitting 70 seats. So obviously a majority government is a majority government, but people here are pleased with that. But there's also that same sense, Rob, and it's true that they were thinking that it possibly could have been higher. So that leads to a lot of other questions about, well, did this so-called fear and smear campaign launched by the NDP, did that play a role? Did people have second thoughts when they headed to the ballot box?
It's definitely a polarized province tonight, Brian. Thank you. With only two parties represented in the legislature right now, two at the opposite ends of the spectrum. So in terms of what we can expect from the UCP government in the days ahead, first 100 days or so, you have a sense of that from Brian Labby. But what can we expect from Her Majesty's loyal opposition? Well, we know that in all likelihood, it'll be led by a former premier, and so she will set the tone, Rachel Notley, and she won't be alone in terms of having a bevy of experienced hands around her. Nancy Carlson is continuing to track the results as they come into our CBC decision desk. And Nancy, the focus at this point is just how many former cabinet ministers will be alongside Rachel Notley. Do you have a sense of that right now?
I do, Rob. When you're looking at that 26, we can break it down even further, and then we're taking a look at who is holding onto those seats. And again, they do have some significant names. You do see a lot of NDP here in Edmonton. That is what they were hoping to see. So let's take a look at some of the cabinet ministers who are managing to hold on. You're looking at former health minister Sarah Hoffman. Again, that's in Edmonton Glenora. She's holding on. You're looking at Darren Billis, Edmonton Beverly Clairview. He as well is holding on. And then as we take a look at another Edmonton riding here, you're looking at Edmonton Riverview. These are all prominent NDP names that are holding on, and that is significant because when we look at these seats that the NDP wanted to hold on to, these are the ones that were crucial. So again, then we have Edmonton Millwoods and Christina Gray also holding on there, again, in Edmonton Millwoods there, Rob.
Notably not in that cluster right now, incumbent Joe Ceci Finance Minister.
Not yet,
Kathleen
no.
Ganley, Justice Minister. So some of these hotly contested Calgary ridings we were talking about, we're continuing to wait to see if those folks will end up in the legislature alongside Rachel Notley. Okay, thank you, Nancy Carlson. We want to head back down to NDP headquarters and Kim Tredacity at the Edmonton Convention Centre. She has a guest, and she has one of those familiar faces from the NDP benches who will be sitting in the legislature, I expect, tonight. Have we elected David Shepherd yet? I can't recall. Kim, do you?
Yes, David Shepherd will be returning to the Legislative Assembly as the NDP MLA for Edmonton Centre. David, how are you feeling? The results coming in one by one. You're not going to see some of your colleagues when you go back to the legislature.
Well, you know, Kim, in general, I'm feeling good tonight. We worked hard. We ran a good campaign. I'm proud of the campaign I ran. I'm proud of the campaign our party ran. I'm proud of the work that our government had the chance to do over the last 4 years. Indeed, it's going to be unfortunate. I'm going to miss some of the good folks I've had a chance to do that work with. But we're going to continue to be here to serve Albertans.
So where did your campaign go wrong?
Well, you know, again, I'm pretty proud of the campaign that we ran. We came through some difficult times in the last 4 years. I think our government was dealt with some difficult pieces to deal with. I'm proud of how Rachel stepped up and has been fighting for Albertans on a number of fronts. But clearly, Albertans had their own decision to make tonight, and we're going to continue to work and fight for them.
So, what do you think of the idea that you're going to be sitting on the opposition side now?
Well, you know, again, I'm willing to take whatever opportunity I have to serve the people of this province. I've worked very hard over the last 4 years to keep a good relationship with folks on all sides of the House. I feel I've built a good position of respect with a lot of colleagues in all parties. So I look forward to the opportunity to continue to do the work that I'm doing on behalf of the residents of Edmonton City Centre from wherever position I take in the legislature.
But what message does this result send to, I guess, your caucus and the people that you worked with and the things that you did over the past 4 years?
Well, it's clear, you know, I think throughout the campaign and clear now that Albertans are feeling very concerned still about the economy. Mr. Kenney has made a lot of very large promises, and it's going to be, I think, the job of everyone then, if he should become Premier, it's going to be our job to make sure that he's able to follow through, and Albertans will judge him for that.
All right, David Shepherd, thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you.
And Rob, that's it from the NDP headquarters at the Edmonton Convention Centre. Rob?
Kim, any word on when we might hear from the new leader of the official opposition?
Not yet. I think they're still waiting for results to come in, and we haven't been told yet exactly when Rachel Notley will be appearing, but we're told we'll get about a 10-minute heads up or so.
Okay, I should make clear the incoming leader of the official opposition. She is still the Premier. Thank you, Kim. So David Shepherd, re-elected by the voters of Edmonton Centre, and perhaps no surprise, the safest seat in the province if you're a New Democrat in the riding of Edmonton Strathcona. Rachel Notley has been re-elected once again. She secured that riding in 2008. She's been in provincial politics for more than a decade now. She did the unthinkable in 2015, took that party from 4 seats to 54, secured the first New Democrat government in the history of this province, known obviously as the heartland of conservative politics across the country. She put herself forward as the face of modern-day Alberta, progressive, inclusive, tolerant, environmentally conscious Alberta. She's been rejected by the people as the Premier tonight. So we're hoping to hear from Rachel Notley shortly, and we've heard some from partisans. We heard from David Shepherd telling us what he can expect from an NDP opposition in the months ahead, and we heard from Brian Labby in terms of the agenda that Jason Kenney will assume in short order. We're hearing 2 weeks, perhaps as soon as 2 weeks we could see a swearing-in ceremony. Let's hear from a regular voter. Get some feedback from someone who maybe doesn't fly the partisan colors. Down at Mercer Tavern, that's where a voter viewing party has been going on tonight. Sounds relatively subdued there, Adrienne Pan.
I would say the mood here is relatively subdued. However, it seems to be quite an NDP partisan election viewing audience here. Every time we're showing results, showing the NDP up, we're having some strong, robust applause. One of the people who is applying, hearing the NDP is doing well, is Mike Sandari. Mike, you're actually an Alberta Party supporter, but you're cheering on the NDP.
Yeah, I am. So I'm a big fan of, well, obviously a big fan of the Alberta Party. I just believe that the NDP had really good social policies over the past this year. So looking at this, I'm frankly fairly disappointed, which is unfortunate. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens the next few years with the UCP in government. But, I mean, I guess it is what it is.
What is it about the UCP's promises platform that, maybe makes you nervous about the next 4 years?
So the biggest thing for me has been this whole voter fraud scandal. My biggest issue there is that I think that this is very indicative of the, I guess, of the way that this could shake the integrity of the party. It's a little bit alarming to see like the next premier who's coming in with all of these scandals behind him. But not only that, I mean, for me it's also the fact that there's something about privatized healthcare that's on the bill, opt-in student unions, stuff that are kind of anti-GSAs. There are a lot of issues that I think I would like to see the UCP address as more social policies.
Now, you voted for the Alberta Party, so what are your hopes for that party at this point?
Yeah, so I'm really hoping that the Alberta Party can win a few seats. I'm really hoping that they take this time to grab a few seats and grow. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for the next few years for them.
Well, we will be watching the results, and thank you so much for talking with us, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
Back to you, Rob.
Thank you, Adrian. Not looking promising for the Alberta Party and its supporters tonight. They're not on the scoreboard at all, not projected to secure any seats in Alberta tonight. The Liberals as well, the Freedom Conservative Party, they haven't popped up. So let's track back and continue our conversation about who might show up in the opposition benches alongside Rachel Notley, David Shepherd, Sarah Hoffman, Christina Gray, perhaps. Hasn't been elected yet, but a strong contingent of cabinet ministers, particularly Nancy, from Edmonton returning to the legislature. And I know you've been looking at a couple of high-profile ministers from Calgary as well.
Yeah, Rob, earlier you mentioned Joe Ceci. Where has he been? Well, we are starting to get some of those numbers in. And again, we are focusing on Calgary here, a much different picture than what we saw in 2015. So as we take a closer look to see where the NDP is holding on, again, you're looking at Joe Ceci. Not a big difference between where he is and where the UCP is. So again, very close. That is definitely one we're going to be watching. What about this one? We have Kathleen Ganley. This is Calgary Mountain View. The name that we don't see on there right now, David Kahn, leader of the Alberta Liberals. He is falling behind the NDP, the UCP, as well as the Alberta Party. That's huge for the Alberta Liberals tonight. And then you're looking at Calgary McCall. And this is one that the NDP has wanted to hold on to. Irvan Sabir holding on right now. Again, you're looking at very few points separating the candidates between the different parties leading and following. And then again, you're looking at Calgary Falconridge, and this one keeps going back and forth. This is a new riding. So again, both parties really wanting to hold on to this, gain power in this area. So as we look at redistribution and the role that it plays, and both of the parties really wanting to focus on Calgary, having more control here. And it looks like the NDP holding on to a few, but probably not the picture in Calgary that they were hoping for tonight, Rob.
And it may be a while before we know in those really hotly contested ridings. I'm thinking Calgary, Buffalo, the incumbent Joe Ceci. We may not know tonight, given how tight that race is and the amount of advance poll out there and vote anywhere that will start to be counted tomorrow. So people who reside in that riding, it could be a while yet. But at this point, Joe Ceci out in front. That's really important for the opposition. The New Democrats want to have somebody high profile from Calgary alongside them. All right, let's talk about another person from Calgary who's been elected tonight, a UCP candidate in the riding of Calgary Shaw. So the people of Calgary Shaw have elected Rebecca Schultz. Now, that means Graham Sucha has gone down to defeat. He was the incumbent there in Calgary Shaw, and Rebecca Schultz just happens to be with Brian Labby at UCP headquarters tonight. I imagine Rebecca Schultz feeling pretty good right now, Brian.
She's feeling really good, and I don't want to take away all her thunder, but just so what does it feel like to knock off, first off, to be elected to the legislature, and then to knock off an NDP incumbent?
Well, it's quite amazing, but it's really just humbling that all the people that I've spoken with over the past 11 months
put their faith in me and our party and Jason Kenney as the leader of the United Conservatives to lead our province forward for the next 4 years.
Okay, so specifically, what did people say about the NDP, or was it more what people were saying about the UCP and what they were hoping for?
You know, it was a bit of both. I think a lot of people wanted a government who would listen to them. Over and over, we heard that people were focused on jobs, the economy. They wanted opportunity and hope. They wanted to be able to raise their families and build their lives here, and they didn't feel that those opportunities existed. They wanted a government that was going to stand up for Albertans, and so I think by and large people felt confident in Jason Kenney's leadership and our platform and what the province would look like under that government.
Okay, I know that you said you knocked on about 13,000 doors, so you need to recover a little bit, and you've got a young family, and you're going to be heading up to Edmonton. This is a lot of change.
You know it is, and I started knocking on doors last May for the nomination. We had a contested nomination in Calgary Shaw to begin with, and so many of the 13,000 were doors I had already knocked on last spring, summer, and fall. But I also thought it was really important to have young families representing us in the legislature, and so that's a decision we made as a family, and I am incredibly excited about that.
Okay, thanks so much. Rebecca Schultz, the new MLA for Calgary Shaw. Rob?
Yeah, she's excited to be an MLA-elect, no doubt about it, and explaining in her terms why she thinks the UCP secured that majority tonight. Thank you, Brian. So a lot of people obviously voted for the UCP. They prefer this option. They want to see change in this province. They're thinking about the economy. A lot of people didn't vote for the UCP, and we heard from one of those NDP supporters, Alberta supporters, Alberta Party supporters, who's sympathetic to the UCP's position when it came to the UCP at Mercer Tavern earlier, highlighting social issues. And I want to put that to the panel because we've talked about the economic agenda that Jason Kenney is going to bring with this new UCP majority. But Najib, a lot of people who didn't vote UCP didn't do so because they bought into the fear campaign. They were concerned that Jason Kenney didn't cut Mark Smith loose when he put gay love alongside pedophilia in a sermon. They were concerned that this party seemed to attract people with sympathetic views around white supremacism. And we're talking about a candidate who was handpicked by Jason Kenney who had to resign here. So there are those who are going to wonder tonight, are we going to see a socially conservative government in policy and legislation? What do you think we'll see from Jason Kenney and the UCP on that front?
Well, I think that a large part of that depends on the NDP. I think they need to demand that from the governing party, that they do change with the times. I think, you know, it's a time of reflection for not just the NDP, but all the small parties of why they weren't relevant in this election, because a lot of them did position themselves like the Alberta Party. I think people had a lot of hope that they, as positioned as the centrist party and a party that is about diversity, why they didn't get any traction. You know, change doesn't just happen at elections, right, Rob? It happens between elections. So I think this is a great time for all the parties to kind of reflect and see moving forward. I think even Jason Kenney's UCP, I think, you know, when you saw how he approached recruiting some of his candidates and trying to recruit from some of the smaller ethnic communities, that he also understands that his party can't stay the way that it is. It has to change.
Is that enough, though? Dwayne Brad, professor of political science at Mount Royal University, someone you know well, Janet Brown, telling us a couple of days ago, Alberta's about to get the most socially conservative government since the days of Ernest Manning. Ernest Manning, who, while premier, hosted a weekly Bible radio show.
Right.
That was social conservatism. So what do you think? Are we going to see from Jason Kenney a social conservative agenda given the makeup and the composition of his caucus, or are we going to see something more akin to what former Progressive Conservative Cabinet Minister Gary Marr was talking about, the Harper model?
Yeah, I think what Jason Kenney is promising is the Harper model. But one of the things that sort of raised its head in this election were the gay-straight alliances. Jason Kenney said he wouldn't change anything, but he is talking about repealing the Education Act. And that would change the nature of GSAs. So on the one hand, he's promised sort of social progressives that they don't have to worry. He's not going to touch, you know, divisive social issues. But then he is kind of tinkering around the edges. So those people who are fearful of a Jason Kenney government are going to be watching maybe this concession speech very closely tonight, and going to be watching very closely the first moves that Jason Kenney takes in the legislature.
That victory speech, for sure. Graham, the Harper model, just to make clear for people at home, is, look, we have these people in our caucus. We're going to give them their say at the annual party convention, and then largely we're going to ignore those issues issues and we're going to govern to the masses on economic issues. What are you expecting from a Jason Kenney?
Yeah, I'm expecting more something more like that. There will be some changes, though. You mentioned gay-straight alliances. You know, the fact that Kenney is going to keep gay-straight alliances, but he's going to, I think, loosen the protection around them. You know, he is replacing the School Act with the Education Act. It's going to backdoor a way of getting around Bill 24, and that was a bill that was brought in by the NDP to protect gay-straight alliances in schools. He'll be taking that away, so there'll be less protection for GSAs. But he keeps saying, look, I'm not going to kill GSAs, they'll still be there, but there won't be the same kind of protection. So I think we'll see, some moves socially conservative that'll be more subtle. But I think overall it'd be more like the Stephen Harper, where maybe he is against abortions on a personal level, but isn't going to change the laws to reflect his own views. And Kenney's been really clear he won't be using his own personal views and beliefs. He's a strong Catholic to affect government policy. But yes, you'll be watching the NDP. It's a relatively strong opposition. Watch Kenney very carefully, because Kenney has talked about that 100 days of change, summer of repeal. Yeah. He'll start blowing up things that the NDP brought in. He'll be dismantling the NDP's legacy. And that's a problem for people in Edmonton who voted for this party.
A new brand of conservatism in power in Alberta, I think it's safe to say. A lot of questions about how that's going to shake out. A lot of people in what is traditionally known as the Bible Belt of Alberta, people who would maybe tack towards that end of the political spectrum, Wild Rosers of the past, is what Nancy's been looking at in the area of Red Deer and around there. Nancy, how did that break out tonight?
Okay, so we are starting in a Red Deer, and the two ridings basically split that city in half. And right now they are holding on. The UCP, again, elected in that area, that's Red Deer North. And then as we take a look at Red Deer South, same picture. So again, that's in the central part of the province. Let's go to the northern part of the province. There you're looking at Slave Lake. Big loss for the NDP there. Danielle Larrabee, cabinet minister, losing out to the UCP there right now. Again, this isn't final. However, she has a lot of ground to make up there in that riding. So again, that would be considered a big loss for the NDP. And then we're looking at Lethbridge East. And again, Lethbridge has been one of those areas that both the NDP and the UCP have been keeping tabs on. And so again, this time we're looking at the UCP taking this one. That's in Lethbridge East. So as we look, we're looking right across the province. Even though that the focus was on the two main cities, we are looking at the areas surrounding the two main cities in central Alberta as well. It all makes a difference when we're looking at those totals tonight, Rob.
Also heading towards defeat, Nancy, the leader of the Alberta Party, former Edmonton Mayor, Stephen Mandel. So let's take a look at the riding of Edmonton-McClung here. Expectations were really high for Stephen Mandel, but he was going up against an incumbent in Lauren Dack. He's unlikely to hang on, or he's unlikely to win that riding tonight. You see him trailing. He's in third place there. So this is Mr. Mandel's second kick of the can. He ran for Jim Prentice's PCs back in 2015 and was wiped out, part of the PC wipeout in 2015. A bit of a resurgent late sort of second life of the political career, deciding that he would seek the leadership of the Alberta Party, hoping that we could see a breakthrough here in Edmonton for the Alberta Party. Mr. Mandel, after Greg Clark, where the party was formed, where the party had its strong roots, was forced out really as leader. Greg Clark resigning, but the backroom chatter was that he was forced out. Got to wonder, Tanara McLean, you're at Alberta Party headquarters, if folks there are wondering if they went in the right direction for that party, turning their back on Calgary in favor of Mr. Mandel. Have you seen any side of him tonight?
Not quite tonight. He is here in the building here at the Alberta Party headquarters. It's also adjacent to their party office, so he has been here. We've been told for the past few minutes that he's coming in imminently, but right now it looks like he will not be winning his seat in Edmonton-McClung. Party supporters here still surprisingly optimistic, but right now everybody is just waiting to hear from Stephen Mandel. It was always going to be a tough race for him. He acknowledged that when I talked to him earlier today. He's just saying right now at this point he's been campaigning essentially for 15 or so months, and he's happy to see it come to an end. And ultimately, through door knocking, he said that he had heard from people that they were just dissatisfied with the NDP. Other campaign supporters telling me that they feel like they have won something because the NDP has seen an erosion in some of those votes. But Mandel, right now, we're just waiting for him to come in. It would have been an interesting win for another party other than the NDP, only because the last time the seat in Edmonton-McClung was held 2 elections in a row was 2008 when David Zhao, the PC candidate, was able to hold it. But the last 4 elections, the seat in Edmonton-McClung has been held by 3 different parties. Tonight, it looks like it will be held by Lauren Dack, the NDP incumbent. Rob?
And it looks like the legislature, Tanera, thank you, is shaping up to be a story of 2 parties. We haven't seen that in this province in decades. So what of the Alberta Party? Well, you know the panel is going to have some thoughts on that, so let's go straight to political strategist Najeeb Jutt. Jenna Brown also with us. She's a Calgary pollster. Graham Thompson, a longtime political columnist. So if the Alberta Party cannot win in Edmonton with a former relatively popular mayor and a seasoned politician in Stephen Mandel, and they can't hold on to their seat in Calgary Elbow, and at this point it appears that Greg Clark, the former leader, the only MLA ever elected under the Alberta Party banner, will not secure that seat tonight. Is this experiment in Alberta politics over?
I don't think the experiment's over. I think the approach has to be redefined. This is, my other hat that I wear during the day is as brand manager, and I've always looked at the Alberta Party as a branding exercise. They positioned themselves as a centrist party, and then they brought in an ex-PC minister as their leader, and I don't think people connected with that. And also the other thing was that then Mr. Mandel wasn't allowed to be who his brand reflects, the fiery mayor that we had here that got an arena built, right? If I was him, I would have went down to Calgary and kicked down some doors and said, hey, I'm the guy who can build arenas, I can also build pipelines. But we never saw that.
Oh, you want to get in that mess, the arena talks? I don't know. Janet, on Greg Clark, so the former leader, the only MLA the party's ever had, did the party make a mistake in turning its back on its Calgary roots and trying to branch out and be that ambitious? And we should give a little bit of context. They did that, obviously, when you saw that uniting of the Conservative vote, and they thought, the theory was, we're going to siphon off a lot of PCers.
Well, the Alberta Party was always in tough in this election. In the last election, when it was a 3-party race, the NDP sort of came up the middle in a lot of ridings and won that way. And so Albertans are very focused on the fact that, they want to make sure their vote counts. They want to make sure they don't give a vote to a party that's really not in the running and inadvertently help a party that they like less. And I heard this all the time from voters. They really liked Stephen Mandel in the debate. They also liked David Conn, the leader of the Liberal Party, in the debate. But they sort of said, I don't know if they have a chance in my riding, and I'm afraid to vote for them. And it was just the struggle they were up against. And it seems like they weren't able to break through that barrier of people not wanting to, quote unquote, throw their vote away.
They don't seem to be on the radar of voters tonight for sure. So let's tack towards the people who won this election campaign, the United Conservative Party and Jason Kenney. Voters definitely curious about what this win will mean for that RCMP investigation. Graham, this is a Facebook question coming in from Dennis Chapin Lane, and excuse me, please, Dennis, if I butchered your name there. And I want to encourage you, by the way, if you're following along on Facebook Live, to get your questions into us, because I'm sitting with some smart people and they've got great answers. So no pressure, Graham. The question from Dennis, will the RCMP investigate Jason Kenney when he is in office? And quite a few people, I have a note here, are asking this question.
Well, of course, it's the law. We have a rule of law in this province. So right now, though, the investigation that we're aware of is not targeting Jason Kenney.
Good point.
The election commissioner was targeting, his investigation was laying fines against people with the Jeff Callaway, the so-called kamikaze candidate. It wasn't aimed at Jason Kenney. He's saying he did nothing wrong. His
says he hasn't even been contacted by the RCMP.
In fact, his party is actually, his office has actually talked to the RCMP. They went to the RCMP and said, we're here to help. And the RCMP investigation, they were called in at the bequest of the election commissioner, who said, I've been investigating this. There's something maybe going on, maybe fraudulently, but this is something dealing with the Jeff Callaway campaign. But having gone back to the question, yes, we're a province, we're a country of laws, and the RCMP, I am very convinced and feel satisfied saying that they would be following whatever this leads, they'll be following it. But so far, it's important to point out that it's not actually led anybody to Jason Kenney. A lot of media looking at this in terms of, this collaboration, if you can call it that, between the Kenney campaign and Jeff Callaway campaign to undermine Brian Jean, former leader of the Wild Rose. Kenney won the UCP leadership. Yeah, you can say that that's old-style politics, that's cynical politics, even dirty politics, but it's nothing illegal.
Okay.
The question of legality is the RCMP, and they will follow this to the end.
Thank you for answering that. I told you you get a smart answer, Dennis. So a lot of people on our Facebook Live feed wondering about that. A lot of people in Alberta are wondering about what this government is going to look like, and in particular when it comes to gender parity. This is something that Rachel Notley, as Premier, made a priority. Justin Trudeau, we've seen make hay with this issue as well in Ottawa. Jason Kenney, not to be outdone, he was conscious of this. He was very active in going out and trying to recruit women candidates. Some of those candidates had to resign in disgrace, I'll add, but it begs the question, what is the composition of the legislature going to look like when it comes to gender, Nancy?
I can answer that question
Awesome.
for you, Rob. Yes, I'm prepared for you. Let's take a look at the gender balance as it stands in the legislature. So when we take a look right across the province, you're looking at elected in 15, leading in 4. That's a change. That's a drop of 4 from what we saw in the last election. And when you look at the UCP, again, gaining 11. That's a positive. But then you see the drop there with the NDP. 15. So again, we're looking at the number of women that we will see in the legislature. And another thing I want to point out here, Rob, is when we look across the country, there was a time when Canada had 5 women holding on to the premier position. And now, with Rachel Notley falling behind Jason Kenney, we don't have any. So there's also that look right across the country, not just here in our province.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of party leaders. Maybe that's something you could work on. How many of them? Obviously, Rachel Notley,
I'm on it.
Elizabeth May, federally. Yeah, let's not go there yet because we have a lot of time to dive into it. And as you say, you're on it. In the meantime, let's talk about the woman who's continuing to lead this province. In the Executive Council as Premier, Rachel Notley. She will eventually end up the leader of the official opposition should she choose to continue on with her political life. Kim Ternassi is down at NDP headquarters at the Edmonton Convention Centre. So Kim has the headphones on because it's getting loud there. And I take it it's getting loud because the crowd is growing, Kim, in anticipation of hearing from Premier Rachel Notley. How soon do you expect?
Well, Rob, with these gargantuan headphones on, I can hear you clearly. It's not doing nothing for my hair, mind you. We're hearing that she is going to speak probably 10 minutes or less, in 10 minutes or less. I'm told that she was going to wait until David Kahn spoke. He, of course, is the Liberal leader who failed to win a seat in Calgary Mountain View this evening. He has just made a concession speech in Calgary, and I'm told that Rachel Notley will speak after that. I was told around 9:45-ish, could be slightly sooner, so the crowd is waiting to hear from Rachel Notley. And they continue to have bursts of applause when they hear some news about familiar faces returning to the legislature. There are a couple of boos that have gone up as well, too. I might note that there was an especially loud roar in the crowd when it was flashed up on the screen that Jasver Dewal, the NDP candidate for Edmonton Meadows, looks like he has been elected in that seat, defeating Jason Kenney's handpicked candidate to run in that riding. It's an Edmonton riding, Len Rhodes. So it looks like the NDP will return an NDP MLA to the legislature from that riding. And I know that Mr. Kenney went there a few times hoping to put Len Rhodes over the top. We haven't seen the final numbers, of course, but it looks like the NDP has won that seat for now. So the crowd here is waiting to hear from Rachel Notley, and they're celebrating what they can, but I think they knew coming into tonight that the odds were clearly not in their favor to return as government.
Okay, Kim, thank you. We'll await the Premier's arrival there, and it'll be interesting to hear what she has to say in terms of her commitment to leading the official opposition. In the meantime, we can confirm Stephen Mandel and Edmonton McClung has been defeated. Let's listen in to the leader of the Alberta Party.
I want to congratulate Jason Kenney in his election and wish him well, and hope that he governs accordingly as a government of everyone in the province, and make sure that he pays attention to the needs of everybody. And so I wish him the best of luck. to Ms. Notley, she put up a good fight, and we wish her well too. Alberta will change as we move forward, and we'll see what happens. But to our party, I think we have to be very proud. You know, we went from just over 2%, yes. to over 10% in the polls and still climbing. And in a very polarized situation, it was difficult for us to, I guess, place our map in the ground of showing people a different idea. People had fixed their ways of polarization right and left, and it made it difficult for us. But you know something, we had the most amazing candidates. We have the most amazing candidates. They're incredibly bright, they're dynamic, they're wonderful. They're an incredible group of people that I was so proud to work with. I think the worst thing is Albertans are now not going to have the privilege of having some of you in the legislature, because all of you are so incredibly bright and have been such a great contributor to what this province could be in the future. We're optimistic about the future of our party. We grew by 5-fold in this past election, and we will continue to work hard. We have a great team led by Rhiannon Hoyle. She's a marvelous president. Everybody in this room and who worked for the Alberta Party must hold their head high, that we put forward ideas, we put forward a vision, we did this in an honorable way, we did these things without trying to berate other people, and trying to put a positive campaign for which we think we did. So all of you, I want to thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure working with you. I look forward to seeing the next steps, what's going to happen with the party. I really believe deeply this is the party of the future in this province. When people get away from this polarization, start looking at ideas and what a party can be, what our province can be, hopefully they'll begin to look in a different way and see that the Alberta Party is the answer. And so in 4 years, in 2023, I'm sure we will field another field of 87 candidates. Hopefully many of the same ones that are here today will decide to put their name forward, because you're an incredibly bright, dynamic, creative, and a wonderful group of people. I'm incredibly proud to run alongside of you. You know, this has been a fascinating process of the last 15 months, and beside me has always been my wonderful wife, Lynn.
All right, Alberta Party leader Stephen Mandel giving his concession speech in Edmonton. He has gone down to defeat in the hotly contested riding of Edmonton-McClung, where the incumbent NDP, Lauren Dack, has been returned to the legislature at this point. Mr. Mandel not touching on his personal future, at least not yet, in that portion of the speech that we just aired. Obviously, at his age, his experience, you got to wonder if that's the last time we will see the prominent bow tie and Mr. Mandel in a formal political role. If not tonight, in the days ahead, he'll be resigning as leader of that party. We also heard a concession speech a little earlier, I'm told, as Kim Ternassi was talking about in the riding of Calgary Mountain View, from the leader of the Liberal Party, who it appears will not secure that seat, which is the seat that's been held by the former leader, David Swan, for some time, Janet. So we have two of the minor party leaders giving their concession speech. We're waiting for Rachel Notley to arrive at the Edmonton Convention Centre any minute, and we'll take you there as soon as we hear of her arrival, and we'll be keen to hear from what we understand. Rachel Notley is adamant that she will be returning. We have heard no indication from her camp that she will be resigning tonight, that she's committed to the party and committed to leading it. But while we wrap up those comments from Stephen Mandel, you surprised that he didn't resign right then and there as leader?
Mandel? No, I'm not, because he didn't have a seat. He has a goal to try and rebuild the party. I think, like Najib said, this stops being a political party and it starts maybe being a branding exercise and a little bit of a movement. But there's no place for centrist voters in this province. And I think people across Canada are going to look at this and they're going to say, Alberta, they're just as crazy and conservative out there as we thought they were. But this doesn't really reflect the fact that this is a socially progressive place. We might be economically conservative. We are a province that voted according to our economic interest this time, but there's nobody out there representing the vast majority of Albertans who are in the middle. So can the Alberta Party keep that movement alive and maybe be a factor in 2023.
Okay, to be continued that conversation. In the meantime, as we await the arrival of the NDP leader, Premier Rachel Notley at NDP HQ in Edmonton, we'll turn things over to Nancy.
Okay, Rob, we're going to take a look at where the NDP has gained ground. So we're looking at Edmonton Meadows. And again, when I say gained ground, this is where we're looking that the UCP was incredibly hopeful that they would take over. You're looking at Len Rhodes. The story behind this is that Jason Kenney personally chose Len Rhodes to run in this riding. There were 3 other people who were interested in running, but Jason Kenney chose Len Rhodes. He is the former CEO of the Edmonton Eskimos. That was not a plan that worked. You're looking at the NDP elected, and again, that is in Edmonton Meadows. And here you're looking at Brian Mason's former riding. Again, the UCP looking to take this from the NDP. It did not happen tonight. You're looking at the NDP elected in Edmonton, Highlands, Norwood. So when we look at those 24, that number 24 on the bottom, there are some key ridings in there that the NDP is definitely proud to be holding on to tonight, Rob.
Edmonton, Strathcona, chief among them, to be sure, Nancy, at, of course, the riding of Rachel Notley as we continue to await her arrival at NDP headquarters. Graham Thompson, maybe let's talk a little bit about what you're expecting to hear from the leader of the NDP when she gets to that podium tonight.
Well, I imagine she'll be staying on as leader. She said she would be. And of course, we think back to Jim Prentice, 2015, when they got 10 seats. The Progressive Conservatives lost to the NDP, and Jim Prentice said, "I'm quitting." And that does not look good for the person. Plus, it causes major problems for the party. Even though they didn't win, it caused major problems. The shock. It made things even worse for the PCs. Tonight, I'm expecting her to stay on, and the question is going to be the concession. Like, how much is she going to say? Let's all pull together and support this government, because it's a really nasty campaign, and the NDP has much different values from the UCP. And you got the UCP and Jason Kenney promising to blow up the NDP's legacy. So this is not, as I said before, this is not a fight that's actually over. Yes, the NDP lost the election, but the fight will continue for them. And the question tonight is going to be, what kind of speech will Notley give? Will it be combative, or is it going to be a bit more, tipping a hat to Kenney for now, and then the fight begins tomorrow?
I'm told it'll include a lot of grace notes, so what you might expect from a concession speech. As we await Rachel Notley's arrival at the Edmonton Convention Centre, Najib, she has given the party something to build around here. Yeah. I mean, we do have now a 2-party composition in the legislature, so looking out to the next election cycle, if you dare go there, could she make that party competitive again?
Well, I mean, we're seeing a lot of changes in Alberta politics, but let's remember that once Albertans kick out a governing party, they've never brought them back, not under the brand that they kicked out anyway, right? So, but this it's a problem for the NDP, right? Because it's not like they can just switch names.
They could.
Well, yeah, I guess they could. Yeah, you're right. In a branding exercise, why not? But I can't see that happening. But weirder things have happened, I guess. But I think that's really the thing to think about is there a place, is there a way, is there a path forward, a path to success in 2023 where the NDP gets back in power?
And is there any scenario where they can do that without Rachel Notley, Janet, at the helm?
Oh, not in the short term. But I think one of the things that, it looks like Rachel Notley will stick around. She's very committed to the party. She's very committed to the NDP movement. And I think maybe she'll see it as her job to start grooming the next generation. In much the same way former leader Brian Mason led that party for so long, but did a great job grooming Rachel Notley and getting her ready for the job. I think she is committed enough to the whole NDP movement, to make sure she doesn't just, drop the party and move on.
No daylight there for any other parties in the legislature, at least according to these numbers, right, Graham. So in terms of building a choice for Albertans, yes, no party that's lost has ever been re-elected. Do you think we're in new uncharted territory? We could see a resurgent NDP in the years ahead, or is this a UCP dynasty?
I'll let you know in 4 years.
Yeah. We'll convene that.
That's the thing, right? We don't know where this province does some weird things. They'll stick with one party for 44 years and then throw them out and bring somebody else in. This may be the NDP experiment failed. Or are they having a chance now to rebuild their party and move on? But again, going back to Rachel Notley, I think that she is key to this. Notley got them that victory in 2015. They need her to stay on and lead this party. And I think that without her, they'd be in serious trouble.
Okay, I got another question for you. You're a parent. You're a grandparent now, right?
Yeah.
All right. So this is coming from a 14-year-old. This is coming from Jade Bolin, who is joining our conversation on Facebook Live. Hey, Jade, thanks for doing so. How are some seats considered elect when they don't have huge margins and a small portion of the polls have been reported? Graham, if you choose, you can defer to the poll.
I'm deferring to the expert here.
Well, and this is outside of my area. I mean, I pride myself on getting random representative samples. We know the way these things go. There's patterns here that, and you know, the guys in the back, they have all the formulas down, and they know what the margin of error is between, you know, the various polls. And so it's a mathematical calculation. They may end up having to change some of these in the end, but they have a pretty good track record of knowing when the math suggests that this one won't change.
Yeah, so they look at the history of the riding, the power of incumbency. In this case, they look at the redistribution of the vote as well, and as you say, where the trend lines are going. It's complicated, Jade. Democracy is complicated.
Well, let me tell you, Jade,
we're there for you.
It's heartbreaking when you're sitting in those campaign offices and they call it for the other guy and only a few polls have come in. So I'm with you, man. It's tough. It's hard.
Yeah, I think Jade hit the nail on the head. A lot of people are probably asking that question tonight. Okay, you three stand by as we await the arrival of Rachel Notley. We'll take you down to the Edmonton Convention Centre soon as she arrives, and her concession speech to follow. Expect a hoarse voice from the Premier because she's essentially lost it, Kim Tredacity was saying, after a very long campaign full of a lot of rhetoric. Nancy, what are you going to bring us up to speed on as we await the arrival of Rachel Notley?
Well, I like how you don't throw questions at me that I may not have the answer to.
I try not
like
to.
That. You don't put me on the spot, and I appreciate that tonight, Rob. We're taking a look at where the UCP has made some significant ground. This is a key riding that we have been watching, controversial for a number of reasons. You're looking at Leela here. She was handpicked by Jason Kenney to be the UCP candidate in this riding. The other name you're going to notice on this board that you want to pay attention to, Derek Fildebrandt, the leader of the Freedom Conservative Party. Again, not the results that he wanted to see, but again, we're looking at the UCP taking Chestermere Strathmore. Cypress Medicine Hat. Again, you're looking at the UCP taking this one again. So this is where the UCP making inroads, holding on in the province of Alberta. Airdrie East, again, we have that one as well. And then we're also taking a look at Calgary Fish Creek. Again, this one's in southern Calgary, and we are looking right across the province as to where the UCP has made some inroads as keeping their ground here in Alberta.
All right, Nancy, yeah, a lot of notable names on that. Derek Fildebrandt, chief among them for political watchers. The expectation is he may pop up in the fall's federal campaign running for Maxime Bernier's party. We'll talk about that when and if it happens. In the meantime, the big story as we are awaiting the arrival of Rachel Notley, as I've said repeatedly, she could be coming through that entryway any minute now. And as you can see, she is being walked into that room at the Edmonton Conference Centre with her two children, her husband Lou Arab, the two of them holding hands. 54-year-old Rachel Notley, the leader of the NDP, the only leader of a party in the history of this province to win a majority government and then not win a consecutive governmental mandate after that. I say 54, guess what tomorrow is for Rachel Notley? It's her birthday. She's turning 55 tomorrow. She was not hoping for this as an early birthday present. Kim Tredacity is down in the crowd at the conference center. Kim, it seems like the Premier is being warmly welcomed there tonight.
Oh, there's a lot of love here for Rachel Notley, Rob. They're not blaming her for this loss, that's for sure. She got them into government. They're giving her a lot of love and warm applause. And if anything, there'll be a lot of analysis, but the defeat tonight will not rest on the shoulders of Rachel Notley. If anything, she got them the number of seats that they will go back into the legislature with. So she's savoring the moment.
You are once again a phenomenal crowd, and it is such an honor to be here with all of you tonight on the traditional territory of Treaty 6 where the Métis people of Alberta share a very deep connection with our land. My friends, I have to say, it's on nights like tonight that I'm very glad that we expanded Alberta's craft beer industry. So yes, tonight's result is not the one that we hoped for or worked so hard for. But you know, as I look out at all of you, I am filled with an enormous sense of gratitude and pride. Gratitude for my team, a more dedicated group of public servants you will never find. And to all of them, particularly those who are not returning to the legislature, you have my eternal thanks. And I want to offer my thanks from the very bottom of my heart to the thousands of over-caffeinated, under-showered, and overworked volunteers and staff who did us so proud. My friends, 4 years ago, Albertans hired us to do a very big job at a very difficult time. And we did that job with purpose. And we did it with integrity. And today, Alberta is a better place because of it. I am enormously proud of our record, and you all should be too. And let me begin by saying to every girl and every young woman watching tonight, I believe in you, and never stop believing in yourself. I hope that we have shown you that in your life, anything is possible. And you know, sometimes it can feel like you take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. But may you never, ever stop taking those steps forward. And for those of us who are working for a more progressive Alberta, this may feel like a step back, but remember, we have made tremendous progress. As I said, Albertans turned to us at a very challenging time. The oil price collapse hit us hard, exposing deep vulnerabilities in our economy. And through patient and determined action, we began the hard work of lasting change. Today in Alberta, we are acting like the owners of our resources again, upgrading more of the resources we own. Hard, exposing deep and creating the jobs that Albertans deserve. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. We are closer than ever to building a pipeline to Hidewater and getting those resources to new markets. But But more than that, my friends, we are preparing for the economy that's coming, expanding renewables and investing in ideas and innovation. And today in Alberta, the lowest paid among us make a better living. The best in Canada. Because we raise the minimum wage, because we believe all work has dignity and all work should be rewarded. Today in Alberta, our kids are breathing cleaner air because we are leaders combating climate change. And let me say, as one of the world's great energy leaders, we must remain leaders on combating climate change. Because we owe that to our children. And speaking of our children, today in Alberta, those same kids are learning in good schools, and our loved ones are getting good health care. Public health care and public education are the great equalizers in our society. We defended them in government, and let me be very clear, we will defend them always. And my friends, this is very important to me. Today, the number of children living in poverty is half of what it was when we were elected. That is 44,000 more kids who go to school with a full stomach and clothes to keep warm in the winter. And let me say, no matter what our role is in the legislature going forward, we will not rest until every child in Alberta is pulled out of poverty. And my friends, today in Alberta, it doesn't matter, and it never should matter, where you're from, to whom you pray, or who you love. To every Albertan out there who identifies as LGBTQ2SA+, no, you will always have a champion in me and in the Alberta NDP and in the Alberta NDP opposition. And to every person who has worked with us to stand against bigotry, know that in Alberta, there is no place for racism. There never will be. And we will never shy away from calling it out, because we know we are all Albertans, fellow citizens on a common journey. For me, over these last 4 years, this has actually been the animating force of our government. All of us are in this together. One province with one future, and I am so proud that that is our legacy. And so in Alberta, I'm also proud. I'm proud that workers will be safer on the job. And never again will you be fired if you take time from work to care for a sick child. And the most vulnerable among us will live better lives because we raised AISH and legally tied them to inflation. And every day, tens of thousands more kids will get a healthy meal at school. And, my friends, I believe we have set a much higher standard for ethics and honesty in government. But now I must say, as proud as I am of our record, the fact is, the people of Alberta have spoken. Democracy is our absolute highest value, and I accept their decision. Now, I have just spoken to Premier-elect Jason Kenney, and I have offered him my sincere congratulations. And I assured him that we will do everything that we can to ensure the transition to a new government is smooth and productive. And I wish him and his government well. We all do, we must, because we all love Alberta. I also congratulate Stephen Mandel, David Kahn, and Derek Fildebrandt on good, thoughtful campaigns. Your contributions to public life in Alberta are deeply valued by all Albertans. Now, my friends, Albertans have hired us to lead a constructive and effective opposition. As leader of the opposition, I will do the job to the best of my ability and with the utmost integrity. I will defend the values we carried forward in government and the decisions those values drove. And I will make sure that our vision of Alberta endures through a rigorous and robust opposition, holding government to account and making sure the voices of all Albertans are heard in their legislature. For my friends, our cause endures in the life of this province. It has for many generations, and I am again enormously grateful to the wonderful people of Edmonton Strathcona for their renewed vote of confidence. I love you, Edmonton Strathcona. And of course, I'd like to offer the greatest of love and special mention to three very special residents of Edmonton Strathcona. Lou, Sophie, and Ethan, you are the love of my lives. I wouldn't be here without you today. I love you so much. Friends, for hundreds of thousands of Albertans who voted for us today, the path we chose was right for the province. It reflected the province we have become. Young, incredibly diverse, outward-looking, confident. A province of enormous entrepreneurial energy joined with the conviction that we can achieve more working together than we can alone. Because, friends, if one thing is true, it is this. We have fundamentally changed the politics of this province forever. I was 7 years old when my dad was first elected to the legislature of this province, and that was the same year that the Conservatives first took power. I was 51 when we ended the era of one-party rule. Today, politics in Alberta has changed forever. Governing in Alberta should never again be a divine right, but always, always an earned privilege. Because in our democracy, power must come with the high expectations of those we serve and profound obligations to public service, obligations that we all must work every day to live up to. Alberta, let me say, it has been an incredible honor to serve as your Premier, and it will be an honor to serve as the leader of Her Majesty's loyal opposition. And As I close tonight, I draw on the inspiration of those who came before and who charted the path that we have traveled and will continue to travel. Courage, my friends. It's not too late to build a better world. Thank you. Thank you all, Alberta. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you.
There you have it. Confirmation from the outgoing Premier of Alberta that she will accept her position as the incoming leader of the official opposition. Saying that that opposition will be constructive and effective, and pointing to her legacy, obviously acknowledging the defeat, to a lot of disappointment in that room, but saying this may feel like a step back. We have made tremendous progress, saying politics in Alberta has changed forever. It's quite a concession speech, full of energy, felt at times more like a stump speech, going over her history in government, the achievements of the last 4 years that the NDP has accomplished, not only through legislation, but taking the province in a new direction, really essentially saying it doesn't have to be what you grew up with, talking about the reality that she was born into. At 7 years old, the first time the Progressive Conservatives came to power. At 51, it took that long before there was a change in that, citing the late Grant Notley, her father, who was a leader of the NDP for a stretch and an effective leader of the opposition, a much smaller opposition than Rachel Notley will be fronting in the legislature. So I want to take it back to the panel as we watch Rachel Notley and her family exit stage left. A lot of detail there, Graham Thompson, about the record, the accomplishments, a lot of the stuff that you would have expected to hear more prominently, perhaps during the campaign. Did that surprise you?
We were talking, Jen and I were saying, this is a speech she never gave. This is a speech she should have given. She's talking about, the fact that they inherited a mess from the Conservatives and then into a recession. And she's defending her platform. Like I've listened to her throughout the last 4 weeks. This is the most spirited, I think, in a sense, speech she's given. And it's interesting to see that she's actually giving this speech in a context. She's being graceful to Kenney, but to a point.
Yeah, only to a point.
She's saying, look, I'm going to defend our values, and she'll be in the House for the summer. I imagine will be brought back. Kenney's promising to bring the session back pretty quickly to repeal a lot of the things that she's actually brought in. So expect, the graceful speech tonight will morph into a more combative attitude tomorrow.
We should say that we're expecting to hear from Premier-designate Jason Kenney shortly. He's expected to arrive at the Big Four on the Stampede grounds in Calgary in that blue Dodge Ram any minute. That there'll be a promotional video of sorts that will precede his arrival. Of course, we'll take you there as soon as we get word of that. In the meantime, Janet, throwing down the gauntlet. It seemed like that. Rachel Notley was saying, okay, all right, we've got our results. I'm going to inherit this position, given that the people of Alberta have spoken. Yes, best wishes to you, Mr. Kenney, but here are the lines in the sand. Felt like that, didn't it?
Yeah, and like Graham and I, we were talking, like this is the stump speech she should have been giving. Very little mention of Jason Kenney, focused on her accomplishments. If this was the speech she had been giving for the last 28 days, the numbers on the board may not look the same. But, you know, she focused on Jason Kenney. It definitely gave voters pause when it came to Jason Kenney, but also all that negativity splashed back on her. And I think these results show that people may be a little bit concerned about Jason Kenney's social agenda, but she wasn't able to sort of break through. Jason Kenney is as popular today as he was when he created and founded the UCP party 18 months ago.
Thoughts on what you heard from Rachel Notley there, Najib?
Genuine, inspiring, strong, gracious. That's the Notley brand that we didn't see. Right?
Some humor.
Yeah, some humor, you know, and that's a Notley brand we didn't see enough of. We just didn't. I mean, I agree with both my fellow panelists. Like, that speech could have been given twice a day over the last 28 days, minus the concession part.
Okay, I want to stop you now because we are hearing that Jason Kenney is about to roll on into the Big Four. And as mentioned, that blue Dodge Ram. Now, he returned to the province to try and bring those two aspects of the Conservative family together, the Progressive Conservatives who lost that dynasty, the Wild Rose that were founded in reaction to frustration with the Progressive Conservatives, and he hit the road in that blue truck to show it was a symbol. You know, I'm like you. I'm like the working people. I'm going to get this province back on track. I'm going to get jobs and the economy pipelines back on track. So perhaps no surprise that he's rolling into a warm and joyous welcome there at UCP headquarters in Calgary, and that he'll be turning that truck north and sending it up the QE2 to the legislature, where he will preside over the first UCP majority government in this province's history. 50-year-old Jason Kenney is the premier designate. He will be Alberta's 18th premier. Our Brian Labby down there at the scene. And Brian, wow, the premier designate being mobbed right now. All right, it appears we don't have Brian Labby. So as we say, Jason Kenney, he united the right. He said, come together, I will deliver an end to what he called the accidental government, the NDP experiment. He wins a commanding majority tonight, 62 seats, leading and elected to the NDP's 25. He has had a conversation with Rachel Notley. We've heard from her, and we're about to hear from Premier Designate Jason Kenney. Let's listen to the room, and then Mr. Kenney.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, fellow Albertans. What a great day for the province of Alberta. Friends, today our great province has sent a message to Canada and the world. Alberta is open for business. Friends, this democratic decision is a message to all of those Albertans who are struggling, to the unemployed, to those who have given up, to the small business owners barely hanging on, to the young people who got their degrees and their diplomas but can't find work, to those who have lost their homes and their hope after years of economic decline and stagnation. To them, we send this message. Help is on the way and hope is on the horizon. Albertans, friends, Albertans have elected a government that will be obsessed with getting this province back to work. A team that will do everything in our power every single day to create tens of thousands of good jobs, by restoring investor confidence, by unleashing the job-creating power of our entrepreneurs, by taking Alberta from being the slowest moving and most over-regulated economy in Canada to being one of the freest and fastest moving economies in the world. So Tonight, I send an important message to businesses everywhere. If you want to benefit from what will be the lowest taxes in Canada, if you want to benefit from a government that will cut its red tape burden by 1/3, if you want to benefit from Canada's most educated population and a deep culture of enterprise and innovation, help us. Come here, invest here, create jobs here. Renew the Alberta advantage here. And tonight, we send a message to our fellow Canadians from coast to coast. This is very important. Friends, to our fellow Canadians, we Albertans are proud Canadians. And tonight, we have elected a government that will stand up and secure a fair deal for Alberta in this great country. There is a deep frustration in this province, a sense that we have contributed massively to the rest of Canada, but that everywhere we turn, we are being blocked in and pinned down. Albertans have contributed over $600 billion to the rest of Canada through fiscal federalism in recent decades. And until recently, we've been a key engine of Canada's prosperity, of growing the middle class, of economic progress, and of social mobility. Our population has doubled in recent decades as we've welcomed newcomers from every corner of Canada, people who often left behind the despair of unemployment to enjoy the dignity of work in Alberta's opportunity society. We Albertans are proud to have helped our fellow Canadians when times were good here and tough elsewhere. But now Albertans are going through a time of trial. We have the highest unemployment outside of Atlantic Canada. Nearly 200,000 Albertans are out of work. Thousands of businesses have closed their doors. Incomes are down. Bankruptcies are up. This is in part because we cannot get our energy to global markets at a fair price. So we Canadians have been blessed with the world's third largest oil reserves and an abundance of natural gas. But we have been targeted. We have been targeted by a foreign-funded campaign of special interests seeking to landlock Canadian energy. This means that we Canadians have become captive to the United States as the only market for Canada's largest export product, our energy. As a result, we've been selling our country's greatest asset at fire sale prices, losing billions of dollars of value that belongs to us. That means we've lost money that could have built schools and hospitals across Canada. This giveaway of our energy has caused the flight of tens of billions of dollars of investment from Alberta, and with it the loss of tens of thousands of jobs. And we are subsidizing in the process the U.S. economy, while the investment that has fled Canada is fueling an unprecedented oil boom south of the border. It just doesn't make sense, does it? Friends, what I'm doing is explaining to Canadians who are listening the reality that we are living through. Meanwhile, the foreign-funded special interests campaigning against Canadian energy have done precisely nothing to stop the doubling of oil production in the United States or to reduce by one single barrel energy coming from OPEC dictatorships or Vladimir Putin's Russia. In other words, friends, we Canadians have been had. And in Ottawa, we have a federal government that has made this bad situation We have in Ottawa a federal government that has made a bad situation much worse, killing two major pipelines, including Energy East, that would have helped our friends in Quebec and Atlantic Canada displace foreign oil with Canadian energy. That same federal government is imposing. Go for it. I'm sorry. I got to correct you. We never should have ended up with the faint hope of one pipeline. It's build those pipes. So that same federal government is imposing new laws that will make it impossible to get pipelines approved in the future. And we have provincial governments that have tried to block our energy. But friends, tonight, all of that changes. Tonight, Albertans have decided that we will no longer passively accept the campaign of defamation against the industry that has helped to create one of the most prosperous and generous societies on earth. So tonight, we say to our fellow Canadians, let us unite together to unleash Canada's full economic potential. Let us renew the promise of confederation as a true economic union. Let us begin a new era in Canada, putting behind us all the barriers to trade and mobility that make us poorer. We Albertans love our natural environment, and we seek to preserve it. We take seriously the challenge of climate change. We are world leaders in innovating to reduce emissions and shrink the environmental footprint of Canadian energy. And we are united in the need to continue diversifying our economy. But as long as there is a growing global demand for oil and gas, the question is, who will provide it? Will we abandon global energy markets to dictatorships that spread conflict and violence around the world? Or will Canada compete with and displace conflict oil with Canadian energy that is produced at the highest environmental, human rights, and labor standards on earth? That's the question. Fellow Canadians, the world needs more Canada. The world needs more Canadian energy. This is not just about our shared prosperity. It is also a moral cause. Now, let me thank the growing alliance of provincial governments who are champions of jobs, pipelines, and our resources. Thank you especially to my friends, Premiers Moe of Saskatchewan, Pallister of Manitoba, Ford of Ontario, Higgs of New Brunswick, and McLeod of the Northwest Territories. I look forward to deepening our work together to create jobs and shared prosperity. Let me also, this is very important, let me also thank the growing number of progressive Indigenous leaders across Canada who want to be partners in responsible resource development. Alberta's government will sit down with you in the spirit of the treaties, in the spirit of reconciliation, to develop real partnerships that can help move First Nations people from poverty to prosperity through resources. We will create the Aboriginal Opportunities Corporation to help First Nations become co-owners of pipelines and other major resource projects. Because, friends, the time has come to move beyond symbolic gestures to real, concrete measures for Indigenous people to benefit from the resources that lie beneath the lands that they first inhabited. Again, this is not just an economic imperative, it is a moral obligation of our generation that we must meet. And now, friends, I have a message, another message. A message to those foreign-funded special interests who have been leading a campaign of economic sabotage against this great province. to the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, to the Tides Foundation, to Lead Now, to the David Suzuki Foundation, and to all of the others. Your days of pushing around Albertans with impunity just ended. We Albertans are patient and we're fair-minded, but we've had enough of your campaign of defamation and double standards. So today, with this election, we begin to stand up for ourselves, for our jobs, and for our future. Today, we Albertans begin to fight back. From this day forward, whenever you lie about how we produce energy, we will tell the truth assertively. And we will use every means at our disposal to hold you to account. When multinational companies like HSBC boycott Alberta, we'll boycott them. We will launch a public inquiry into the foreign source of funds behind the campaign to landlock Alberta's energy. And we will ban foreign money from our politics and use every legal tool at our disposal to defend the working women and men of Alberta. And now, friends, please bear with me for a minute, because I have a very important message for us to deliver to our friends in Quebec. Le Quebec, who we admire and with whom we want to work. Le Quebec, and I'm going to speak in French for a moment. Please bear with me. I'll repeat this in English. Le Quebec et l'Alberta.
Quebec and Alberta have always been natural allies. Albertans admire Quebecers. We share common values, and we believe in respectful federalism and the respect for jurisdiction.
Albertans admire Quebecers, and we share common values and believe in a respectful federalism that respects provincial jurisdiction. Des milliers, oui, c'est vrai, right?
Yes, that's right, thousands.
Des milliers de Québécois ont choisi leur domicile en Alberta.
Chose to live in Alberta.
Thousands of Quebecers have chosen to make Alberta their new home. I
have a lot of respect for your Premier, François Legault. I admire the fact that his government is focusing on economic growth and that they decided to eliminate Quebec's dependency on equalization payments.
I admire that his government is focused on economic growth and is committed to ending Quebec's dependence on equalization. Les Albertains, it's important that we communicate this message of partnership, friends. Les Albertains sont généreux.
Albertans are generous. During periods of prosperity, we've never hesitated to share our wealth with the other provinces. But times have changed a lot. Alberta is now facing serious economic difficulties. We're going through an unemployment crisis with very high unemployment.
In good times, we never hesitate to share our wealth with other provinces. But times have changed with an economic crisis in this province. Pourquoi ces difficultés?
Why are we facing these difficulties? Well, one of the reasons is that we can't export our oil to international markets. We need pipelines for prosperity for all Canadians, including Quebecers.
We need pipelines for the prosperity of all Canadians, including Quebecers. La décision à prendre n'est pas difficile.
The decision to be made is not hard. Should we give priority to Canadian Alberta oil, which is produced with the highest standards, or that of the U.S. and OPEC? The answer is clear.
Do Quebecers want to fuel their economy with ethically produced Canadian energy or with that oil imported from the United States and the OPEC dictatorships. To ask the question is to answer it. And so the decision we need to make is this. Let me say this to all Quebecers and to Premier Legault. At a time when Alberta is hurting, we must work together. If
Quebec and the other provinces want to accept massive fiscal transfers coming from Alberta, well, please help us develop our natural resources and our economy.
If Quebecers and other provinces want to benefit from massive transfers developed by the hard work and resources of Albertans, then they must be partners with us in developing those resources and getting them to international markets. Friends, today Albertans have chosen hope over fear and unity over division. They have chosen free enterprise values over the politics of resentment. They have rejected the politics of personal destruction and endorsed the most detailed plan ever offered to Alberta voters, 117 pages long with 375 specific commitments. Commitments to get Alberta working. Friends, tonight, the silent majority has spoken. The silent majority has spoken, not the loud and angry voices on social media, but average Albertans who simply spoke today, those folks who simply want their common sense values reflected in their government, who want high-quality health, education and public services, but who understand that we need a vibrant private sector economy in order to pay for those things. Albertans who get that governments cannot redistribute wealth unless someone is creating that wealth through their hard work in the first place. Albertans who know that we cannot tax and borrow our way to prosperity. Albertans who understand that the carbon tax is all economic pain and no environmental gain, and who want to scrap the carbon tax cash grab. Albertans who know that debt is a trap that takes money away from vital public services and sends it to bankers and bondholders. Albertans who believe in our great tradition of school choice because they understand that parents know better than politicians what's best for their kids. Friends, let me thank all of those who have entrusted us with your confidence today. We will strive to honor your confidence every single day. To be sure, our government will make mistakes. We won't be perfect. But I can guarantee you that we'll work every single day to deliver on our commitments to you, to create jobs, to fight for a fair deal in Canada, to make Alberta strong and free. Friends, Premier Notley and I spoke earlier this evening. I look forward to working with her on an orderly transition. And let me thank our Premier for her tremendous public service. As I've said many times, go ahead, please. Please do. As I've said many times before, we are fortunate to have a Premier of such ability, intelligence, and passion for this province. Our disagreements should never diminish our respect for one another as Albertans who are devoted to making life better for our fellow citizens. So, on behalf of all Albertans, thank you, Premier, for your hard work over these 4 past challenging years. Thank you to your team. While we have policy differences, there can be no doubt that you've always sought to make the right decisions in the service of Albertans according to the best of your judgment. Let me also thank David Kahn, Stephen Mandel, and their teams as well. Albertans, I truly believe Albertans are well served to have political leadership of this caliber. Thank you as well to candidates from all parties who had the courage to put their names on the ballot. You helped to make democracy happen today. Fellow Albertans, it's my hope that we can work together to stop the coarsening of our public discourse, to raise the bar of civility and respect. And while we will always have disagreements, as we should in a democracy, let us seek always to express those disagreements without being disagreeable. Thank you to our remarkable United Conservative team of candidates, a new generation that is ready to lead. To those who have been elected, I cannot wait to get to work with you. And to those who didn't succeed tonight, you contributed to our broader success, for which I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much to our thousands of volunteers who have worked so hard to bring us to this moment of hope and change. Thank you to the voters of Calgary-Lougheed for entrusting me with your confidence once again. And a special thank you to my campaign manager, Tasha Schindel, and our amazing local volunteers for running a brilliant campaign, largely in my absence. Friends, nearly 3 years ago, we launched an audacious campaign to reunite free enterprise Albertans into one big tent coalition. Many said it couldn't be done, but we overcame enormous obstacles along the way. To all of those who opened their homes and their hearts to me as I visited every corner of the province over the past 3 years, let me say thank you. I've been moved again and again by the endless generosity of Albertans in building this grassroots movement into the biggest provincial political party in Canada and the next government of Alberta. Folks, let me tell you about one such individual. August the 6th, 2016, I pulled up that blue pickup in front of the Esso station in Hardisty. Doesn't get much more Alberta than Hardisty, by the way. And I was filling up my gas tank. Young fella pulls up behind mine, jumps out, rushes up, starts filling, says to me, "Excuse me, are you that Kenney guy?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "How long before you get rid of this government?" I said, "Probably about 3 years." He said to me, "Sir, that's not fast enough. You got to go faster." I said, "Look, fella, I'm going as fast as I can, but they will choose when the election is, not us." And he stopped me right there. He said, "Sir," he got very emotional. He said, "Sir, please understand, my dad lost his job out here 18 months ago. He's getting depressed now. I've never seen him like this before, and I'm worried about him. And I'm just 17, and I'm the only paycheck for mom and dad and all 4 of my brothers and sisters." And that young 17-year-old started to tear up in front of me. I realized at any normal time in our Alberta lives, that 17-year-old would be working hard and playing hard, probably not paying a lot of attention to politics. But suddenly, the decisions that we made today meant everything for him and his family. So I'm sorry to that young man, wherever he is, I have thought about you every day for the past 3 years. And hundreds of other Albertans who have shared with me their stories of adversity. But to all of them, we say, we finally got it done. Folks, I'll just close by saying this. That young man and countless other Albertans are what this is all about. We haven't worked this hard or for this long for politics or for power, but for people. The people who have lost so much, the people at the margins. Tonight, and the next 4 years is for them. It's about doing everything within our power to make it possible for people like that to achieve their God-given potential in this great land of prosperity and opportunity called Alberta. It's about the single moms struggling to make ends meet. It's about the seniors on fixed incomes who are anxious about paying the bills. It's about the farmers and small business owners who have sleepless nights about growing debt. It's about the First Nations people who too often feel like they can't get a fair shot at opportunity. It's about the new Canadians who are stuck in survival jobs because they can't get their degrees or work experience recognized. It's about the young Albertans who are wondering if they have to leave our province to find work. It's about the oil field families who've lost their homes. It's about the lady in Medicine Hat last week who came up to me in tears to say, my husband's been working in Ontario for 2 years. Please get our economy back so he can come home. It's about those people that we work so hard. And so, friends, I stand here tonight with you, with the members of our new government, to say that we will fight for those Albertans and so many more like them. And finally, let me speak to those Albertans who did not vote for the United Conservatives today. I respect and honor your choice. We will strive to be a government for all Albertans, not just those who voted for us. Albertans have given us a mandate to implement the positive ideas in our platform, to bring bold change that gets Alberta back to work. In implementing those policies, we will reach out to those who disagree in a spirit of dialogue, to find common ground wherever possible, to listen, and when we're wrong, to change course. But friends, let me close as I began our entire United Alberta movement 3 years ago by saying that Alberta isn't just a place on a map. It's not just a random collection of people. Alberta is an idea. It's an idea of a free society that believes in the creative power of human potential, of people unleashed to pursue their greatest strengths and passions, a belief that strong and resilient individuals, strong communities are better at preventing social problems than a big impersonal and bureaucratic state. We need to revive our belief in those entrepreneurial Alberta values that built this province into the envy of the world. And with your support in the 4 years to come, that is exactly what we will do, working day and night to renew the Alberta advantage, to renew this province as a place of hope and opportunity for generations to come, an Alberta that is strong and free. God bless you, and God bless Alberta. Thank you very much.
All right, there's the balloon drop at UCP headquarters down at Stampede Grounds in Calgary, and there is the next premier of Alberta, the 18th in our province's history, Jason Kenney, after delivering a lengthy, very interesting victory speech tonight. Where to begin? Let's begin with the message to Albertans, which is not what he led with in that speech, and that's notable. He said the silent majority has spoken. Albertans have chosen hope and prosperity over division. That obviously a nod to the negative campaigning he was facing from his chief opposition in this campaign, Rachel Notley and the NDP, acknowledging Rachel Notley and the NDP's contribution to Alberta, acknowledging the fact that they came into power during difficult economic times, and reaching out to those who didn't support the UCP. Jason Kenney saying, we will strive to be a government for all Albertans, not just those who voted for us. So a lot of what you would expect, boilerplate language for someone who's inheriting the office and will have to govern for all Albertans, but definitely opened with an interesting tone. Opened, I guess, staying in the lane that won him this election. That is delivering the UCP its first ever majority government in Alberta. Alberta is open for business were the first words out of his mouth. He then went on from a message to all of Canada, to the world, supporting businesses, trying to generate more jobs, to messages specifically to those in Quebec. For the first time during a victory speech on election night, a premier designate spoke words en français directly to Quebecers. He had words about the alliance of like-minded premiers across the country. That was targeted at guess who? Justin Trudeau. A real, where to start? Okay, why don't we start with this? In terms of the message, Janet, that stood out for you for Albertans. So obviously we have the popular vote numbers in. 53.8% of those who were eligible to vote and cast a ballot voted for the UCP. This is a divided province. Majority did favor that party. But he did say what you would expect, as I said, and the necessary verbiage came out of his mouth. Do you think it'll be received in an open and generous way by those who didn't vote for him?
Well, the necessary verbiage came out, but very late in the speech. But I think he won by a large enough victory that he wanted to speak to his supporters. He wanted to get the ball rolling on his fight with Ottawa and the other provinces, and that was obviously a bigger priority to him than than trying to smooth over voters who didn't vote for him.
Can he smooth over those voters who didn't vote for him, Grant?
Yeah, it's going to be a big question because they're basically in Edmonton. There's a few other areas, but this is a split in the province, very clear division. And it's interesting, Notley, did thank Kenney relatively early in her speech, but he didn't even mention his opponents until near the bottom. He mentioned Albertans. He talks to Albertans near the bottom. He began his speech talking to foreign companies, or people fighting our oil or keeping our oil landlocked. He talked to Quebec. A lot of anger, a lot of fieriness, and this is him. This is his campaign continuing. And this is like tonight did not end the campaign in a sense for Jason Kenney, because he's talked about taking on Trudeau, not just getting tough with pipelines, actually defeating Trudeau in the election, helping defeat Trudeau and help Andrew Scheer federally. So he's on another campaign already.
Conservative Party leader Andrew Scheer in the last week of the campaign making a campaign stop on behalf of Jason Kenney and saying, look, first step for you, elect Jason Kenney. Next step for me, elect us and the Conservative Party. You mentioned the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has issued the following statement. I look forward to working with the provincial government to create good middle-class jobs, build infrastructure and grow business and industries at the heart of Alberta's prosperity so the province can remain competitive in our changing economy. Together, we will address issues of importance, Najib, following to Albertans and all Canadians, including supporting canola producers and taking decisive action on climate change while getting our natural resources to market. He also thanked Rachel Notley. Together, can you imagine Justin Trudeau and Jason Kenney working together on anything? Clear from that speech that was a shot across the bow, wasn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And for a minute there, I tuned out and thought I was listening to a federal election speech. I don't know if that's a coincidence, but yeah, any chance that the federal Liberals had in Alberta is done. That's my opinion, and then I think Mr. Scheer knows that too, and that's why he came down.
It's really interesting. Jason Kenney is super media savvy. He knows that this is being carried across the nation on CBC News Network and other networks as well. So he tailored that speech to reach out to a national audience. Why do you think he wants to do that, Gray? What's the political advantage at this point for him, having been elected?
Yeah, well, this is him. This is channeling the anger Albertans have to Quebec and British Columbia. Didn't actually mention them overtly like he'd mentioned Quebec, but this is him channeling the anger to other provinces, saying, look, this is real. We're not just going to be nice to everybody. We're actually going to start fighting. And he's very loud. You can see the passion he had there. So he is channeling that passion, the anger a lot of Albertans have, and he's warning other provinces. We're not going to back down. We're going to be in your face. Now, you can question the constitutionality of what he's trying to do in terms of, he's going to fight equalization, he's going to fight the carbon tax federally, he's going to try and turn off the taps to British Columbia, potentially.
Yeah, John Horgan has tweeted out a congratulatory tweets to Jason Kenney, by the way. On that note, Janet, do you think that Jason Kenney will actually enact that legislation, that he will turn off the taps, or was it a threat in the context of a campaign? And obviously, may have won him some votes.
Well, I mean, that remains to be seen. I think now that he's the Premier, he'll have a different calculation on these things, and I think he'll reach out to British Columbia. But, I mean, it's definitely a tool he's going to keep in his toolkit, and it's a hammer he's prepared to pull out. But, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how other provinces react to what happened here tonight in British Columbia. And John Horgan may be thinking about his own, political future, and maybe it's time to pull the string and try and get a majority government so he's better prepared to fight the fight that's coming down the road.
Okay, we're going to park that one there, and we'll
Sure.
think about BC politics down the line. A lot to digest and a lot to talk about in the days ahead. What with the outcome here in Alberta tonight and the years ahead. We've got 4 years of a majority UCP government, but we still have some outstanding races, too close to call in this province. And before we sign off at the top of the clock, Nancy Carlson is back to bring us up to speed on where those races are taking place and just how close they are, Nancy.
Yeah, Rob, you're talking 4 years down the road. I'm going to shorten that a little bit, and we're just going to look as to when exactly we may be able to declare a winner in these ridings that are too close to call. Let's just take a look at some of them. And again, so we're looking in Edmonton, and Calgary, and of course outside the two major cities there as well. When you're looking at what's dividing them, I mean, you're looking at a 0.7%, 113 votes. We're looking at incredible close margins when we are looking at how close these ridings are. And something that is going to play a role in when we will be able to declare a winner in these ridings. It's not going to happen tonight. It will be in the days, weeks to come, because again, when we look at the advanced polls, there are going to be more than 220 votes that are actually going to be counted tomorrow and into the coming days. And again, they're not expected to change the outcome too much, but again, just something to keep in mind as we are looking at the results. And then as we look at some of the ridings where they are too close to call, or actually we're going to look at voter turnout. Let's look at that. Let's take a look at voter turnout. So again, we were looking at more than 700,000 people in the advanced votes. We were asking, what kind of difference is that going to make when it comes to advanced polls overall? It's up 4.6%. Not that significant compared to 2015. Again, you never know with those advanced polls because we were seeing such huge numbers with those. So again, you're looking at a change of 4.6 percentage points. And I do have it here. So the highest voter turnout was in 1938. That was 81%. The lowest was in 2008 at 40.6%. And again, these are unofficial numbers because we are still waiting for them to come in. But this is what this is from what we have right now, Rob. That's where we're looking at voter turnout. How many Albertans weighed in and made a difference tonight.
Okay, as you say, Nancy, it could be a while until some folks
Yes.
in certain too close to call ridings find out, which means for them, this election campaign continues. It really has been going on for years. Jason Kenney mentioning 3 years since he came up with this idea of uniting the right and running for the highest office in this province. You see the Alberta flag behind Brian Labby down at UCP HQ. Brian, it's been a long campaign and a long night for you as well. Having heard what Jason Kenney just had to say, the next Premier of Alberta, why don't you leave us with some final thoughts?
Well, I just want to pick up on what Graham was saying. I mean, it's absolutely true that the campaign, in a sense, continues. And Jason Kenney really tapped into the anger in the room. And you can hear, I mean, some of the loudest cheers came when Jason Kenney was talking about those special funded interest groups, foreign funded special interest groups. The crowd was just electrified talking about that. So that really is a continuation. But you have to remember that the Kenney campaign was dogged by controversy throughout. The NDP, of course, tried to make this about character and trust. That didn't work. And of course, it didn't matter, but we have to remember that the RCMP and the Election Commission in Alberta will continue to investigate allegations of voter fraud and irregular donations to the so-called kamikaze campaign, and that is real, and that work will continue. So that is something, obviously, Jason Kenney and UCP will continue to celebrate into the night, but that is something that is going to pop up over the next few months as Jason Kenney settles in to the legislature.
All right, Brian, but as you say, the big story tonight, the UCP and the Conservative vote ascendant in this province once again. So let's track over to that tale of two cities as it continues. NDP headquarters in Edmonton, that's where we find Kim Trinacity. What a different story behind you, Kim. It's pretty much cleared out. As for final thoughts, you've been covering this Premier for the last 4 years. Rachel Notley, she will now sit as the leader of the official opposition. What are you expecting, and what do you think of the campaign that just unfolded?
Well, what came through loudly and clearly, Rob, tonight is that they have no regrets about the campaign or what they did over the last 4 years. Remember, this party, the NDP, is deeply rooted in social justice causes, and that's something that I think we're going to see a continuation of as they slide into their new role as being the official opposition. I spoke to a number of people here tonight, including Sarah Hoffman, who has been returned as the MLA for Edmonton Glenora. No regrets from her. She's incredibly proud of the work that they did, as is Rachel Notley in her concession speech tonight, talking about raising the minimum wage. She did a special shout out to young women, young girls, saying never be afraid of taking that step. Cutting child poverty and cutting or introducing school lunch programs. These are things that Jason Kenney will have to think about if he's going to undo them. You know, they brought changes to the labor code, which he said he's going to change, labor legislation. But what about those things that parents and people have come to rely on, like a hot lunch for their kids? And the crowd is thinning out here, Rob, so we'll see what happens next with the NDP. Some of those races still aren't decided, and some of them are very, very close, even the ones they did win. So it'll be interesting to see how the NDP evolves into their next phase of being official opposition.
It's going to be a fascinating 4 years for political reporters such as yourself on so many fronts. Thank you, Kim. As we get some final thoughts on the outcome tonight from our panel, the strategist, Najib Jutt, what do you want to leave us with to think about in the days ahead?
Well, I think it's easy to be on the sidelines and talk tough and give criticism, but now the ball is in Mr. Kenney's court, and we'll see if he delivers on all of his mandates. Some of these things are a lot more complex than he's made them seem.
Janet?
This result makes Alberta seem like a wildly conservative place. We're economically conservative, but this is probably not a reflection of our social values.
Graham?
Yeah, of course, it made it sound like the NDP caused all the problems in Alberta, the carbon tax, things like that. So you defeat the NDP and things bounce back. It won't be that simple.
Yeah. All right. And Nancy Carlson, we'd like to hear from you one last time. Fantastic job sorting through all of those ridings tonight and leaving us with a picture of this province as it evolved. And look at that. Fitting that you're going to leave us with something that really does tell the tale of the night.
Yeah, it makes it really easy to understand how things progress. So this is a map of Alberta at the end of the last vote from 2015. And then if we switch gears, you can see how much of a change there has been tonight in Alberta. Again, you can see where the NDP is and, of course, where all of that Conservative blue is tonight, Rob.
Yes, Nancy, the Conservative vote has aligned under a united Conservative Party. This was Jason Kenney's vision. He sold supporters in the Wild Rose and the PCs that, look, if you come together under my leadership that still has a cloud over it, I can deliver. That accidental government, as he referred to it, will be a thing of the past. And in fact, he made history by securing the UCP its first mandate tonight. He also made history in relegating Rachel Notley and the NDP to an interesting footnote in Alberta political history, the only party to ever secure a mandate and then not secure a consecutive mandate from the people of Alberta. This is not your grandfather's Alberta, clearly. 53% of the popular vote went to the UCP tonight, so there's division in this province, and you can see it in the composition with the scoreboard on your screen right now. Only two parties will be representing Albertans in the legislature. One clearly coming from a progressive point of view and championing social issues, environmental issues. The other focused on the economy, jobs, free enterprise, business. It's going to be a fascinating 4 years. We'll be here for you along the way. Quite a night in Alberta. On behalf of everyone at CBC, I want to thank you for joining us for this special broadcast. Albertans are preparing for a new chapter in our province's political history. CBC News will be there at all points along the way, here on TV, radio, and online, all of our platforms. Good night.